The New York Giants season is finally over, and they've made a decision. They're going to stick with their hierarchy as they head into the 2025 offseason. We'll talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown Live. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Big Blue Breakdown Live. I'm Paul Dottino. We are here always to talk Giants football, usually during the season on Wednesday, but guess what? There was big stuff happening down at MetLife Stadium today, so we decided a special season-ending edition was appropriate here on Monday night. The Giants had locker cleanout following their 20-13 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. That dropped them to 3-14 on the season. Disappointing to say the least, but as all the other organizations around the league have discovered over the last 24 hours, they needed to make a decision. Some organizations decided that they would make some significant changes moving forward. The Giants were not one of them. Team President John Mara, as you already know, I'm sure, if you haven't looked at the Giants website and watched the video of his press conference, perhaps you've seen his statement all over the internet. He announced that the Giants will indeed stick with Brian Daboll and General Manager Joe Schoen for the 2025 season. No promises beyond that. John Mara would only say that in a year, he better feel better about the team than he does today. Well, that can be interpreted in a whole lot of ways. But I think one thing is extremely clear. As he also said, his patience has just about run out. This is a guy who hurts with every loss, hurts with everything that happens negatively to his team. And no matter how much a fan out there thinks that they ache and they are in agony when the Giants come up short, you can't even imagine what the Mara family and the Tisch families go through when this team does not turn up with a victory. It is incredibly difficult for them to swallow. Now, I'm going to go through some of the items today that were talked about at the press conference. Tudo Aarene, hey, look at this. Tudo is already back jumping on. I got a few people already jumping onto the chat. Guys, I'm going to get to you in just a bit. You know how it goes. We try to give you a state of the team or state of the situation, and then I get to your chats. I will get to you guys in just a little bit. But Tudo, let me give you a big hi and thank you. And we appreciate that. He's another super user today. For sure, doing a great job with us. And, you know, Tudo says right off the bat, he goes, Happy New Year, Big Boss Paulie, and all diehard Giants fans across the pond. You know, Tudo, you guys know if you follow our program, he's from the rugby team in Italy, loves the Giants. Everybody over there is big-time fan. And so it is awesome when we get him from across the pond to contribute to the program. And again, Tudo, thank you so much for supporting this program in so many different ways. All right, so what I'm going to do right here is, again, I want to briefly go through some of what we found out today, okay? And once I go through that, it'll be up to you folks to react. I'm not here to argue with anybody, okay? I'm not going to do that. It's pointless. Arguments are just irrelevant. The Giants have made their move. It is what it is. Whether or not you like it or you don't, they're going to move forward in this direction with these two gentlemen in charge. So the best way to be productive and to contribute to this conversation is to look forward and decide some of the things that maybe you want to opine about as to what they might be able to do in 2025. To just bellyache and complain about the decision, I don't know that that's very productive. Some of you may need to do that because you need to just get it off your chest. I'll try to be lenient with that. But at the same time, it doesn't really advance the story in any way. So I would hope that most of you out there who are joining the program are more interested in how the Giants can get better and what they can do to make things more enjoyable in 2025, as opposed to just screaming and crying and being upset over what was a 3-14 season. That's now in the rearview mirror, and it's not going to do much good to continue to relive that or hammer that home. So that's where I am tonight. So let's go through the key points from President John Mara today. He said, as far as Joe Schoen, the key reasons why he gets to come back: the 2023 draft class being very, very hopeful and productive. He liked very much the free agency that the Giants had this past offseason. And I'm not going to go through all the names of all the different players, but obviously he's also including Brian Burns in there, because even though he was acquired in a trade, they did have to get permission from Carolina to negotiate the contract extension. So in effect, they're treating him as if he was a free agent, but that was a trade. John Mara is including him in their offseason haul. You know, whether or not it was Illuminor or Runyon as free agents, that's fine. But he's also including Burns as one of those, as a part of that shopping cart. So he's very pleased with the 2023 draft class, pleased with the free agency haul. He's pleased with the staff that Joe Schoen has put together, and says that this is the best ever process that he has seen for a general manager going through personnel decisions. As you folks know, the Giants did a complete overhaul after Joe Schoen got here about 3 months prior to the 2022 draft. And it took them, over 2 years to actually get it all squared away, to the point where this past season, they actually finally got all of the pieces of the puzzle in place to how they want to run their personnel department. There were a lot of scouts that were changed out. There were methods that were changed out. They are so much more involved in details and so much more research than they have ever been before. They totally revamped and computerized their entire scouting system to be at the cutting edge of technology, if you will. And of course, the draft room, which I'm sure you guys know about because you saw it on the Giants website, it really is kind of like the control room for the Starship Enterprise in Star Trek. It is absolutely incredible what they were able to do with that room. And that beats, taking a magic marker and writing guys' names on tape and then putting the tape on the magnets and putting them on the board. I mean, it was such an archaic thing that the Giants were still using in this century. It boggles the mind how far behind they were in terms of their technology for the draft process. Well, Joe Schoen is ad infinitum when it comes to all of the uses of technology and the ability to research and to get every little detail about every potential acquisition or player that they want to find out about. So that's the other item that John Mara mentioned in terms of why Joe Schoen is back. Also, as far as Brian Daboll, the head coach, he said, I understand the record is what it is. And if you base it totally on the record, the team stunk. And there were a number of factors for that. But he said in evaluating Brian Daboll, he watches practice. And I've told you this on this show. I can't tell you how many times I have, either here, on the radio, on television, on Big Blue Kickoff Live. John Mara makes it a point to be out at practice as often as he possibly can when he's not doing business for the NFL. And he watches. He sees how practice is conducted. He sees if the players are paying attention. He sees if the coaching staff and the head coach in particular are running things appropriately. And he is very satisfied with the way the practices were run. He also said that Joe and Brian work very well together. The players clearly have responded, and the overall process is something that he believes in. Therefore, he believes that patience is the best way to go, as opposed to, as you folks know, what happened with McAdoo, what happened with Shermer, what happened with Judge. They got their 2 years, they sputtered, they faltered, and they were gone. I remember before the Giants made the hire of Brian Daboll, one of the things that John Mara had said, in addition to hoping that Schoen and Daboll would work out, he had said, he kind of had some regret that maybe he hadn't shown more patience with the 3 previous head coaches that were fired after only 2 seasons apiece. Well, John Mara is now showing that patience. He feels that he learned a valuable lesson and that perhaps he was hasty and made a mistake on those previous 3 guys. That could be. He'll never know because he pulled the trigger early. He's not doing that this time. So if he makes a mistake, as he said, if this time next year, if he's answering the same questions, he will live up to that responsibility and that accountability. And it's better to do that. Stand up for what it is you believe in and live with the potential consequences than to prematurely throw something aside and then never know if it would have worked out. So anyway, as far as a couple of other items from the John Mara press conference earlier today, he said that Steve Tisch, the Giants co-owner, they had their initial meeting on Friday, kept discussing things, and Brian Daboll said it was actually early this morning when he was given the news. Now, according to John Mara, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are going to continue to have conversation with ownership and consider possible changes in some of the things that the Giants have done. One of the changes could be on the staff. Now, John Mara said that it will be up to Schoen and Daboll to make those calls, but he certainly wants to see a detailed review, and if they need to make a change, they see fit to make a change, well, that's something that we may hear from very shortly. He also said that in talking to Brian Daboll, that the play calling was something that came under scrutiny, and that it is possible that Brian Daboll would give up the play calling this year. John Mara said he wishes that he would consider it, would not mandate that Daboll gives up the play calling, but that he would at least discuss it and consider it. Brian Daboll later on at his press conference did refer to that specific topic and said that he actually made that suggestion to John Mara. So that sounds as though there's a real chance there for that to wind up going in a different direction. As far as tanking goes, John Mara said as long as he is here and he is in charge, anybody in his organization who goes in for a tank would be fired immediately. That was never going to be part of the equation for the Giants. And as you know, with their 3-14 record, they will be picking 3rd in the April 2025 NFL Draft. Again, no timetable on how long these two fellas have, other than John Mara saying he needs to feel better this time next year about the direction of the team. He did not mandate a playoff spot, simply that he needs to feel better about the team than he does right now. The 3 priorities to improve the roster, according to team president John Mara. Number 1, a quarterback. And he made it very clear that it could be a veteran obtained through free agency or trade, or it could be a rookie that they take in the draft. He is open to all avenues in order to find the Giants quarterback for next season. Number 2, he was very unsatisfied or dissatisfied with the Giants defense this year. He said he got very tired of watching other teams' offenses go up and down the field and through the Giants defense. Number 3, he said he would like to see increased offensive line depth. I think we all know the Giants had 10 different starting offensive line combinations this season. Now, last year, they had a historically poor offensive line. The fact that this offensive line got closer to being respectable is still not enough. They must continue to enhance the offensive line. Being better than historically bad, that doesn't cut the mustard. And so it's quarterback, defense, and offensive line that John Mara is going to be looking for as the Giants try to improve things during this offseason. Final thought from the Giants owner. He was asked, how can you think or opine that the Giants are a better roster than when Judge and Schoen took over? And he said, well, and I'm paraphrasing, he would like to believe it, but he said he's not sure that he can, because the record of 3-14, if you strictly go by that number, it's not. But at the same time, he does want to believe, especially with, I think it's 18 players. No, it's 16 players coming from the last 2 rookie classes that are on this team right now, with tremendous potential and a lot of upside, and with already some significant contributions. The thought process is that those guys are going to be the core of the team moving forward, and that there is some significant upside, especially if you have continuity and stability. So that's where it stands. That's the stuff that came from Giants president and co-owner John Mara earlier this morning. I was in the locker room. I talked to, my goodness, at least 24 of the Giants players. They were unanimous in their opinion of Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen coming back. And it was a very upbeat locker room. In fact, in the 42 years that I've covered the Giants in the National Football League, if I were to grade the type of atmosphere that I have seen after the season finale of a losing campaign, this one was the most upbeat ever. These guys really do respect and appreciate one another. They are unified. They are together. They are behind this coaching staff. And as I said on the WFAN postgame show yesterday, those guys are really of the attitude that they'd love to go out despite the record and play another game. They care about each other that much. They have such a unity. And so that's a different feeling. You don't usually get that kind of vibe in the locker room as they're cleaning out for the end of the season, following one in which they've had a very poor record. This is a very unique situation for me when I experienced that earlier today. And so I think that's a significant piece of evidence as to Brian Daboll's ability to move forward with this club. In addition to that, in surveying many of these players about what they thought the Giants needed going forward, there were 2 common themes. Everyone said they certainly have to make sure that they pick the right quarterback. Everybody knows that. And I've tried to tell people wherever I've spoken the last few weeks that, it's really, really hard to draft one, no question. But in this case, I think the Giants need to go for a veteran bridge quarterback. And it seems to me that that decision is going to require just as much detailed research as it does on these college prospects. In effect, going after a free agent or a potential trade for veteran quarterback is going to be tricky. You've got to get the right guy. You've got to get the guy who is going to have a resurgence and help your team get back to immediate respectability. We've seen what Sam Darnold miraculously has done to boost the Vikings. We saw Kirk Cousins not do so well in Atlanta, perhaps because, as Phil Simms said, the rehab from the Achilles impacted his lower body strength and his throwing motion, and it looks like he had a dead arm down near the stretch of the season and got replaced by Michael Penix. So there's a guy who didn't work out as well for Atlanta as they wanted it to. What happened with Geno Smith in Seattle? This guy was a vagabond, a journeyman. And suddenly something clicked in Seattle and he became a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. I still don't understand how that happened. I think Houdini came back from the dead and waved some kind of magical wand over Geno Smith, and all of a sudden, this guy was playing at a very high level, out of nowhere. It is probably the most remarkable turnaround that I've ever seen, maybe next to Jim Plunkett. If you folks are a little bit older, you might remember what Jim Plunkett did with the Patriots and the 49ers, which was basically not so much until he wound up going to the Oakland Raiders. And of course, the Las Vegas Raiders were Oakland and Los Angeles there for a while. I know you young folks probably don't remember those days, but was able to get the Raiders that Lombardi trophy. Plunkett had an incredible resurgence after he got there on his third National Football League team. So, and I don't even think I need to go any further. With the Giants, you had Kerry Collins, who limited success with Carolina, no success with New Orleans, and then with the Giants, certainly playoff-bound quarterback who got them to Super Bowl 35 when they crushed Minnesota for the NFC Championship in the 2000 season, 41-0, and Collins had one of the greatest postseason games of any quarterback in NFC playoff history. And that was a resurgence that nobody expected. Kerry Collins was a free agent. Nobody wanted him. And Ernie, of course, he was able to pick him up off the trash heap. And he had a renaissance of a career. In fact, even after he left the Giants, he did some pretty good things. So that's what the Giants, in my opinion, need to do. They need to find a rejuvenated, a renaissance, a reclamation quarterback, if you will. Now, there's always a chance that, they'll have an opportunity to maybe get somebody who hasn't had a dip, or maybe, was playing at a high level already and they make a deal for him. I don't think that's as likely, which is why, as I look at this, and I don't speak for the organization, I speak for myself, Team X, I will say, because it's a lot safer that way. You never know the way people interpret things. I'd say if Team X was looking for a bridge quarterback, a veteran who has won games in a big spot before, Jimmy Garoppolo, for me, would be at the top of my list and the first free agent veteran quarterback I would call. The man has won plenty of games in this league, in big spots, and actually taken somebody to the Super Bowl when he was in San Francisco. And remember, he was in New England, went to San Francisco, went to the Raiders for 1 year, got hurt again. He's had a couple injuries, had a broken hand, had an ACL. So he's had a couple of serious injuries. And now this year with the Rams, and he threw for over 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns just yesterday in his one shot to play as they rested Matthew Stafford. Garoppolo's only 33 years old. He is begging for a chance to start again. I just think that for Team X looking for a veteran bridge quarterback, he probably won't break your bank. You could probably get him with a nice, reasonable deal with some incentives thrown in. And the guy has won games in this league at a high level and gone to the postseason. And do I need to tell you about the thrill and the excitement in the New York City metropolitan area for an Italian quarterback who wins games? I mean, look what Vinny Testaverde did for the Jets when he had somewhat of a renaissance until he got hurt. And of course, yes, I know, I was going to get there. Tommy DeVito, when he won 3 games last year and really set this place ablaze with excitement. So there you go, my man. I'm looking at Team X. I just think Jimmy Garoppolo makes so much sense in so many ways. You'd have to, of course, give him a physical, check him out, make sure he's healthy. Certainly looked healthy enough yesterday when he threw for over 300 yards in the game for the Rams. In any event, so that's where it's at. We gave you John Mara's summary. We gave you locker room summary. Oh, yeah, the other thing, besides a competent quarterback and a very difficult decision that the Giants are going to have to make again, not only who do you pick, but then what do you give up to get the guy? Either what kind of salary and contract demands, or if you're going to make a trade. There are guys under contract right now, veteran quarterbacks who've won games in this league before, who may be available by trade. What's the price? A lot of factors involved here. In any event, the second thing that I found from walking through the Giants locker room today is that players also were very concerned about the defense not getting enough takeaways. The turnover ratio with this team this year, unacceptable. They were on the negative side of the ledger. Now, the year before, you remember, they were, I believe it was plus 14. That's what you got to do. Everybody in the locker room that I talked to said you've got to win the turnover ratio. Well, the only problem with that is you can't really plan that. Yes, you can teach tactics that may potentially help you get turnovers, but there's still a certain amount of luck involved in taking the ball away. So I appreciate that. I think that's absolutely true. The Giants do need to get a lot more takeaways on the defensive side of the ball. About the only thing that I would say to enhance that situation, and it goes back to what John Mara said about making improvements on the defense. I think you can never, first of all, you can never have enough cover corners. So that would be one thing that I would do. I would definitely investigate another cover corner so that if you have Banks and you have Flott and you have Phillips, you want to get a fourth guy. It really helps if you have 4 corners that you feel comfortable with. So I would certainly want another one of those. I don't know much, don't think much necessarily about the backers. I think they're in pretty good shape there, but you certainly want to add a stud 3-technique defensive lineman. I think that would be absolutely critical to this team. Now, I don't know what kind of changes they will make to the defensive staff, if they will tweak the scheme, or if they'll make changes to the staff that may bring in a different person who may have a different scheme that they're going to want to employ anyway. Don't know the answer to that. Brian Daboll would only say that over the next few days, they'll figure out exactly what they'd like to do with the staff. But what I know is this. If the Giants can employ a terrific 3-technique defensive lineman next to Dexter Lawrence, and oh, by the way, yeah, they had one, Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence together were an amazing pair. They were a terrific duo and a wonderful combination. And of course, again, we all know what happened. Seattle called last year, asked if they could make a deal to get him. Joe Schoen asked Leonard Williams, what do you want to do? We got a chance to deal you to a playoff contender. What do you think? Do you want to go? And Leonard said, yeah, I'd love to go. I'd love to go to a playoff contender. It's okay. Thanks for asking. Great respect between the Giants organization and Leonard Williams. And so they made the deal. And then at the end of the season, Leonard Williams re-signed with the Seattle Seahawks and put up double-digit sacks this year. No surprise to me. I've always told anybody who would listen that Leonard Williams is a hell of a football player. Really, really good football player. And when he combined with Dexter Lawrence, the Giants had a twosome there on that front line that really caused people trouble. Well, doesn't matter who they've put in since. They need another one of those kinds of guys who can have the kind of impact that Leonard Williams had on this defense. That will not only help the pass rush, which in turn helps the back end, but it also helps defend against the run. That was one of the great things about Leonard Williams. Came into the league with a reputation. Everybody thought, oh, he's going to be a great pass rusher and sack specialist with the Jets. Well, they didn't use him properly. The best thing about Leonard Williams is you want him to do both things. You don't want to just ask him to be a pass rusher. You want him also to be an edge setter and a run stuffer, in addition to pushing the pocket. The Giants knew what they were doing when they got him, and he did some really good things for this team. So, in any event, I do believe that an additional cover corner and a stud 3-technique defensive tackle would be the two biggest needs on defense for the Giants. And if you can get those two spots solidified, it should help put more pressure on offenses, and then maybe in turn, that might allow the Giants to get some more takeaways. But that's all about the schematics, and we just don't know what direction they're going to go in right now. With that, I invite you folks to either call me up with a video call me up with an audio call, or for that matter, write down on the chat along the right side of your screen, and we will see what we can do as we commence with this program and start talking New York Giants football. We start with Louis Provocero, says Trainwreck Central, all aboard. Louis obviously frustrated by the 3-14 record. Understood. Hopefully you'll still be a fan next season when the Giants do better. Hello, Christine. Always great to have you. She's one of our regulars. Hope you're doing well. She says, good evening. Going to do my best to make it to the end of this show. Very excited to be here tonight. Well, we're happy to have you. Would like your stats for the O-line this year compared to last, if possible. Well, let's see. So now you're going to make me get out my trusty laptop, huh? All right, let's see what we got here. Okay. While I do that, let me go to somebody else. And Christine, I'm going to power up the old trusty laptop. Get these top secret charts and spreadsheets going. And we will share some of those numbers with you in just a moment. Aiden Fink says, can you please give us an answer to Wilson's homework question that you assigned today on BBKL? Well, the question that was asked of Wilson earlier today, Wilson is one of the regular callers on the Big Blue Kickoff live show. And, of course, he called up, and Wilson is always negative, always complains, and always has something that he's unhappy with. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, except it's not productive to restrict your comments to complaints. If you've got a complaint, at least offer a suggestion or a solution or something to contribute to move the conversation forward, as I told you guys at the beginning of the program tonight. So anyway, Wilson starts complaining and he starts hammering things around and this and that, okay, whatever, gloom and doom. So I said, okay, Wilson. He says he's unhappy, right, with the way things went down today. So I said, all right, it is what it is. The owner's already decided. The GM and the coach is in place. The coaches and the GM will decide if the staff is going to be in place. But let's hypothetically assume that they're going to keep the same staff, just to make it easy. So I said, Wilson, this is what I want you to do. You tell me. I'm making you Joe Schoen. And I'm going to offer this question to anybody who is watching the show tonight. And I mean this. Anybody who's watching or listening to this program, you can chime in on this because it is a question that demands answers. And there are no right or wrong answers. That's the beauty of it. I said, Wilson, you're Joe Schoen. We're going to hypothetically assume you cannot touch the coaching staff. I said, make it easy. Give me your top 2 priorities. What are you going to do to help this team going into next season? And he said, well, I'm not going to draft a quarterback at number 3. And I said, okay, I happen to be understanding of that, and I think they need to get a veteran quarterback. I would not want to rely on a rookie quarterback at the number 3 pick to play for this team next year. So, okay, great. But Wilson, that's not the answer. Because what you're not going to do does not tell me what you are going to do. So I said, Wilson, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I don't know. Exactly. Most people who complain about a given situation don't have anything to offer other than a complaint. And so I gave him another 30 seconds or so to try to give an answer, try to offer a suggestion, and he had none. So I told Wilson, I said, listen, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. The next time you call into the show, I don't just want 2. I'm now going to, because he's going to have more time to think about it, I want 3 things that you would do to help this team get better. And so, Aiden, that's where we are right now. The next time that Wilson calls up Big Blue Kickoff Live and I am on the program, I am going to ask him for his homework. Now, if I know Wilson as well as I do, he's been calling the program over there on Giants.com for quite a while, he's probably going to tell me his dog ate his homework and he will not have 3 suggestions for what the team might be able to do to improve. But, hey, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and let's hope that he actually comes up with something constructive to say. In the meantime, if you have anything here tonight, again, certainly I would be very, very glad to get some constructive criticism along those lines. Okay? Now, back to Christine. We take Aiden off the board here a second, and then I'm going to get back to the rest of you folks. Okay, here's what I could tell you, Christine. Here's what my spreadsheet says in terms of this year's New York Giants offensive line. They allowed 48 sacks this year. 22 of the 48 sacks were on 3rd down. And 21 of the 48 sacks were part of a zone blitz, which, as many of you probably know, but for those of you who don't, I'll explain it to you. You'll have X number of people up on the line of scrimmage, and it looks like they're going to rush 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 defenders at the quarterback. But then when the ball is snapped, a certain number of those players, it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, will drop out. Okay? They will drop out. And so you'll have a different number of blitzers or pressure players than what they showed. That's the most simple way to explain a zone blitz. Okay? Another way that you will get one is you will wind up having one guy up at the line, he drops out, and they wind up sending a blitzer from the other side because they're changing up what they're showing you at the line of scrimmage. Zone blitzes absolutely destroyed the Giants last season. So now I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet for last year, and let me see what I have for you. Last season, Giants allowed 85 sacks, 28 on third down, and 18 on a zone blitz. Okay? So they actually gave up more zone blitz sacks this year than they did last year, in spite of the fact that they gave up nearly half as many sacks. So that is something you certainly, if you're offensive line coach Carmen Brasillo and whoever's constructing the offensive plays, you would want to consider that. And you would want to say, okay, why are zone blitzes causing so much trouble? Is that because the guys are having difficulty with communication? They're physically having trouble picking it up? Is it because the quarterback or the center hasn't made the right call at the line of scrimmage on the pre-snap read and they got duped or fooled? There could be a lot of reasons why. Now, I will also tell you, because my charts go back several years, just for laughs and giggles, if you want to go back to the 2022 season, when the Giants gave up 47 sacks, 16 of them were on third down, and there were 9 on a zone blitz. See, so now you guys already have a bunch of numbers off of my proprietary spreadsheets. See, Christine, you asked, and we opened up the trusty laptop for you and gave you some proprietary information that you're not going to read anywhere else. So thanks for the question. I appreciate it. And it's always fun to give you guys exclusive kinds of information and insight that you're not going to be able to get in other places. Okay, let's see what else do we have here. Big Blue. Evening, Paul. What's Drew Phillips doing in a 4-point stance on the defensive line? Next, how about Salah or Anarumo as the next defensive coordinator if they make a change? Well, Big Blue, here's what I will say. We have no idea, based on what Brian Daboll said today, if Shane Bowen is going to come back. It is clear, based on John Mara's evaluation, that the second priority for this team is to make improvements on defense. Something's got to change. They're going to need more personnel, which I've already gone through with you, right? We've already said that. Corner and defensive tackle are spots they've got to get some more players. Does the scheme get changed? Does Shane Bowen, tweak what he was trying to do or overhaul what he was trying to do this year? Or does Brian Daboll decide he's got to make a change entirely? That's an answer that I don't have. I had been telling you guys for weeks, anybody on this show or the Big Blue Kickoff Live show, that my opinion was that Daboll and Shane would come back. And I thought it was the right call for a number of reasons that we've discussed for weeks. That I had a really good gut feeling on. I do not have a gut feeling as to what they're going to do on defense, other than something about this defense. There have to be changes because they have to get better. They were simply not good enough. There were too many alignment problems, assignment problems, potentially communication problems. They gave up too many big plays. And there were too many times during the course of the season, even late in the year, where we saw confusion on defense, especially in the back seven. That can't happen. I just am not sure what direction Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are going to go in as they seek those improvements, but there have to be improvements. Now, as far as the two names that you mentioned, I know Lou Anarumo, Staten Island guy, Wagner College guy, was the Giants secondary coach at one point some years ago before he left and became the defensive coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals. He was dismissed this morning. He's had a few players on defense with the Bengals, but not enough. They never stockpiled enough talent, in my opinion, for his unit. And it was amazing how well he did with how little he was given. So I have tremendous respect for Lou Anarumo. And I think that any NFL head coach would be very glad to have him as part of their stable. So I certainly hope wherever it is that he gets hired pretty quickly, and I think he will. As far as Coach Salah, from the former Jets coach, I don't know him well enough. I have had very few dealings with him personally. I think he's a really good guy and certainly a much better defensive coordinator from his days with the San Francisco 49ers than he was as a head coach. But I never saw him on a day-to-day basis. And I always say that sometimes you really do need to make any kind of fair evaluation to see a guy up close and personal on a daily basis. But from afar, the head coach thing with the Jets was not good in many, many ways. But then again, there's also a lot that's not good there in many, many ways anyway. That is not necessarily about him. So having said that, I don't know exactly what his status is. I know he was a consultant with one of the other teams in the NFC after the Jets decided to fire him. I think it was Green Bay, if I'm not mistaken. But you know what? Don't hold me to it. Let me just take a look and make sure I got that right. Was he Green Bay? Yeah, he's a consultant with Green Bay. I don't know. The Packers are in the playoffs. So, if you want to talk to him, you got to get permission. You're going to have to wait a little while anyway. But, yes, we do know, though, of his defensive coaching prowess from his time with the 49ers. Certainly, I do think that somebody in the league would probably like to talk to him about a DC job. Okay. Let's see here. So we answered that. Okay. Oh, we're having a little trouble here with this chat page. It's going out of order, but I will take this one. KM2 says, how about another edge DE? Bowen's D, not so good, huh? Either interview a DC who employs a 3-4 or go to 4-3. Well, again, KM2, there's no question. The facts are the facts. I mean, look, I give you the numbers flat out. Giants defense gave up over 136 yards a game on the ground this year, over 345 yards a game in total offense. I mean, they gave up an average of 24 points or what it was a game? No, it was not good enough. It's got to be better. And it's going to be up to Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll to make the decision as to, from a structure perspective, how they want to fix that. I will tell you from a roster perspective, yeah, get another defensive tackle, get another corner. Another edge, you could always use another edge. Come on. No, that goes without saying. I mean, that's kind of like a stock thing, because I think Azeez Ojulari, coming off of his toe injury, if he can get an offer somewhere else for some decent money, because his production and efficiency was pretty good, I think he would probably go. I think his first choice is to stay with the Giants, but I don't know how that's going to go in terms of contract negotiations. So, yeah, could you use another edge? Sure. But the priority for me would be defensive tackle and corner. Now, I would also say this. Because you have Thibodeau and Burns as your edge guys, it's unlikely that they would go to a 4-3. I don't see them doing that. Now, of course, they have to decide what's going to go on with Thibodeau because, he's been in the league now for 3 years, and you're going to have to figure out what you want to do as a first-round draft pick, what you want to do with his fifth-year option. I personally would pick it up. As he goes into year number 4, I think I would pick it up because I do think there's enough there. And when you look at what pass rushers who have the ability to get double-digit sacks command on the open marketplace, the fifth-year option number is only about $16 million. And usually guys who can get double-digit sacks, and he had 11.5 last season. I know not this season. Got off to a slow start, broke his wrist, was out for over a month, came back, wasn't the same. I understand that. Although he had a lot of pressure in the last month, he wasn't necessarily getting sacks, but he did get a lot of pressures. And he really does help out against the run. He is a good edge setter, and he's stout against running plays. So I think he's a really good player. Not an all-star, but a really good player. And I don't think 16 is too expensive for a player who has the potential of double-digit sacks. Again, it's not just potential because he's done it once before. He had 11.5, in 2023. So that's not just potential. That's fact. He's already done it. So I don't think that's an issue for me. I would definitely pick up that option. So if you're going to have Thibodeau and Burns around, you really kind of have to stick with the 3-4. But now here's what I would say, KM2. When the Giants of Belichick and Parcells played a 3-4, they played a lot of those bare fronts where you had the 3 down linemen and then Lawrence Taylor and Carl Banks were standing up on the edge, so you had a 5-man front. And obviously, what LT was going to do. Most of the time, he was going to blitz, although they did use him in coverage some. But LT was going to go after the quarterback. Carl Banks had the ability to either be stout and set the edge against the run. He had the ability to beat the living stuffing out of the tight end who tried to release off the line or cover that tight end, or had the ability to blitz himself. Now, that might be an interesting way to go. Right now, what the Giants have done a lot of is gone with 2 linemen down and then Thibodeau and Burns on the edge, either standing up or going down themselves. Maybe more of a 3 down lineman, bare front with the 2 stand-up edge rushers. Maybe that would be a better way to go if you're not going to convert to the 4-3, because let's face it, the Giants' talent pool right now does not really favor a 4-3. But we all know how those Parcells-Belichick defenses suffocated the run. That might be one of the schematic things that the Giants could do to change things up for their defense. Anthony O.C. says it's never too late. Phil Simms suggested Joe Schoen was eyeing up Ben Johnson as they know each other. Well, again, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll will have conversations and they will figure out what they want to do with their staff. I'm not going to get into their heads over that because, quite frankly, I watch a lot of football. I watch a lot of tape. I study the players and the X's and the O's. I feel much more comfortable offering suggestions about players than I do offering suggestions about coaches. The only reason I commented earlier is because I do know Lou Anarumo personally, and I am very, very high on him. Much respect for the man. Like him as a person, but also great respect as a professional. His son, by the way, is a scout with the Giants. And obviously we know who Robert Saleh is. So that's the only reason I really commented there. Anthony O.C. says, Daboll's in-game and staff management is like fixing holes on the Titanic. Okay. I-Man says, your thoughts on getting a number one wide receiver like Higgins? When he came out of school, out of Clemson, I said, oh my goodness, this guy would be just perfect in a Giants uniform. Didn't happen, did it? He's going to be real costly. That's the problem. You know, Joe Schoen said today the Giants have over $40 million in cap room, and they do have their draft capital as well. But I don't see the Giants making a huge splash in free agency. I think what they need to do is plug a few holes with reasonably priced free agents. And if they've got to overspend on one, it may wind up having to be for the veteran quarterback. Because as we all know, that's the number one priority. I would love to see a guy like Higgins and his talent on a team like the Giants. That would be awesome. I have a hunch he's probably going to look to go to a dome or to someplace warm, as most receivers usually do. They prefer it that way, so they can put up even bigger numbers in a pass-happy offense and make even more money. So I don't think that's likely, I-Man. I don't. But I would tell you that is a player that I have always admired from afar, and I know he's had some injuries. And I know there was a little thing about the contract this past year. I get all of that. Terrific, terrific player. Love the player. And I think any team could use him. Okay? Any team could use him. Let's be very clear. But, yeah, I think the Giants think, you know, rightfully so, they drafted Malik Nabers at number 6 this past spring because they believe he is their number one receiver. So the only other comment that I will make off of your comment is that Nabers is the number one, and they view him that way. So, you know, your comment about number one in Higgins, that all kind of automatically tells you that it's going to be too prohibitive and too costly to be able to bring him in, because there will be people who are going to view him that way. I-Man adds, any chance Davis Webb comes here as the offensive coordinator? Well, Davis Webb, I can't say enough about that guy. You folks, if you've been following me for a long time, I've always been a very, very, very big fan of Davis Webb. Never really got a chance to play in the league. The one shot he got in the season finale against Philadelphia a couple of years ago, he played extremely well. And that was his only NFL start. And you know what? Big thumbs up to him, and I'm glad he got that opportunity. Then he decided that he was going to go into coaching because he always wanted to. His dad was a coach. He's an incredibly smart man, really understands the game, workaholic beyond belief, great attitude, relates to people so well. Everyone knew that he was going to be a coach from the moment that he retired. And so what did he do? Left the Giants after he got that one start. His family was at the game in Philadelphia. He made sure to get them there to the game because he knew that was going to be his swan song. You know, he got his one start in the NFL, and that fulfilled the dream for him. And then he went to go to Denver to work with the brilliant Sean Payton and to work on his offensive staff, where he has mentored, obviously, one of the two quarterbacks that I liked in this past draft, Bo Nix. Now, Bo Nix did not need a lot of tutelage. As you guys know, I was big on Drake May and I was big on Bo Nix. Those were my two favorite quarterbacks in this past draft. And Bo Nix has done a marvelous job for the Denver Broncos this season. Would Davis Webb leave? I haven't even contemplated that. And quite frankly, the Giants have at this point an offensive coordinator in Mike Kafka and a quarterback's coach in Shea Tierney. So unless there's a vacancy there or Brian Daboll makes a change there, there would not be any room for Davis Webb to make that cross-country trip. I will say this. The Giants staff, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, who know Davis Webb from his time with the Buffalo Bills before they brought him back to the Giants, also think very, very, very highly of him. That part is very true. And I know Davis garnered a lot of respect around the New York Giants organization. So at some point, it would not surprise me if he makes his way back to MetLife Stadium in some coaching capacity. I don't think that's out of line because he was very, very well thought of. Okay. Anthony O.C. again says, Shane eyed up Ben Johnson per Sims. Daboll shifts through coordinators. It's a mess. No brainer. Anthony O.C. also says Daboll needs to go. Well, that's not happening, Anthony, so that's not necessarily a productive comment. Anthony Iman also says, as we just said moments ago, he talks about Davis Webb, says, oh, how about him for the next OC? He's done a good job with Bo Nix. Well, that's, again, that job is not open right now. So, I will talk about Davis Webb as a person and what I think of him, but in regards to that particular job, it's not open. So I will not discuss him in that context. Anthony O.C. says, Paul, I meant Ben Johnson as head coach. Daboll should still go due to his in-game and staff management. Well, but that's not happening. The decision has been made. So, no, that's not happening. That's not relevant at the moment. Sorry, Anthony. Iman says, is Justin Fields that quarterback? Justin Fields is scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. He would certainly be one of the people that teams looking for a bridge quarterback would want to consider. There's going to be a bunch of veteran quarterbacks who have won games in this league that are going to be either free agents or available through trade. There's going to be a whole bunch of them. And if I had 25 people in this room right now, you would probably get 25 different answers. Well, no, I wouldn't say that. You might get 10 different answers, or maybe 8 different answers. But it all depends on your preference. That's what it comes down to. Justin Fields, the interesting part about him, if he's going to be on that list of available guys, is that he's younger than most of them who will be on that list. He's also had less success than most people who are on that list. But at the same time, if you're a believer in Justin Fields, you could make the case that he may have the most upside of the people on that list. So that's a personal preference. That's like when you go to that ice cream shop, they say they got 32 flavors. It's kind of what it's going to be. See, that's the beauty of going for the veteran bridge quarterback instead of taking a rookie quarterback with the third pick. Because the rookie quarterback with the third pick, if the first 2 picks don't take the rookie quarterback, the first 2 slots, because we all know this, right? From all the draft people, there are 2 guys. There's Ward and there's Sanders, or Sanders and Ward, however you want to order them. I personally like Ward more than Sanders myself. But there's a real chance that those 2 quarterbacks are gone 1 and 2 because quarterbacks always get overdrafted. So if they're gone 1 and 2, then you're not taking a quarterback at number 3. The choice or the selection is out of your hands. Now, if the first 2 quarterbacks go at 1 and 2, that means Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, is sitting there at number 3. Now, I have often advocated at the number 3 pick in this situation, you certainly want to explore a trade and see what you could get to move down some. But if Travis Hunter is sitting there at number 3, the Heisman Trophy winner, who is going to be a dynamite cover corner in this league, well, it's going to be awfully hard for someone unless they want to back up a Brinks truck. In fact, 3 Brinks trucks, to make me trade out. And Travis Hunter, if he's sitting there at number 3, I think you have to take him. I just think that that's a no-brainer. And how could anybody criticize someone who takes Travis Hunter at number 3? I mean, any criticism would be completely unfounded. But back to the point about Justin Fields. Well, that's the thing about the veteran bridge quarterback. There's going to be so many options out there that you're going to have to determine and sort through them and see which one do you want, because there will be that many. Not the case with the quarterback situation. That high at number 3, there may be 1, there may be 2. I doubt there's going to be more than 1. I don't think 2 of them are going to be available at number 3. You may have 1 of them available at number 3. If somebody in the first or second spot wants to take Travis Hunter, then you're going to have 1 of the 2 quarterbacks sitting there at 3. See, so that's kind of not the same, right? It's not the same, because you get handed a chocolate ice cream. That's it. That's what you get. If you wanted the ice cream, you're getting chocolate. You're not getting anything else. The bridge quarterback, there's going to be a bunch of them. And you really have to be careful in picking out the right guy. As I say, for me, Team X, I would have Jimmy Garoppolo at the top of that list. That's the guy that's the guy who's getting the first phone call from me. All right, let's see what else we got. Anthony O.C. says, don't waste a high pick. Get a quarterback later and trade for a high potential one like Willis or Milton. Okay, I mean, point is, you're on board of seeing what else you could do without having to force feed one and take one at 3. So in that regard, Anthony O.C., we're on the same page, even if we don't totally agree on every aspect of that particular question. He says, let them battle it out. Iman says, what's your thoughts on Henderson, the OSU quarterback, in round 2? I love Travis Hunter at number 3. Well, thank you for liking my potential pick of Travis Hunter at number 3. OSU quarterback in round 2. Quite frankly, I haven't studied the dark horse quarterbacks that would be on the second day or the third day. I've kind of looked at some of Ward, Milroe, and Sanders to get a rough idea. I don't do a lot of my real deep, in-depth draft study till right after the season's over, which just began today. And then, of course, at the Combine, I become a demon in accumulating information. So I really don't have any thoughts on Henderson right now. What we all do know from talking to draft gurus around the league is that the 2026 quarterback class will have a higher level of quarterback prospect in it, and there will be more than 2 to choose from. At least that's what we're being led to believe. So, again, one of the reasons why you take a veteran bridge now, not only because the Giants are going to have a very difficult schedule in 25, and it's very unlikely that a rookie quarterback who starts is going to win many games next season if the Giants were to put him into the lineup. Why do that? You might just be digging yourself another hole, and you're certainly not climbing out of it. So go get somebody who's going to win you games right away and get you out halfway out of that quicksand. And then you move from there, and you do what you have to do. Come up with the money, come up with the draft picks, come up with the trade bait. If you got to move up in the 2026 draft, then you do it. Worry about that then. Or who knows? Maybe like Kerry Collins, you signed a bridge quarterback, and he turns out to be really, really good. And he sticks with you for 4 or 5 years. Anthony O.C., Paul, do you like Riley Leonard or Dylan Gabriel? Gabriel, his rather short stature is a problem for me. Getting passes batted down and being able to see over the linemen who get their hands up and their arms up, and linebackers who do that in the National Football League. Gabriel, I'm not really going there. Leonard, I haven't seen enough. Gabriel only because Oregon's number 1, and I've seen them play a couple of times. That's the only reason I'm even commenting on him. So we got plenty of time to talk draft. Again, the Giants season just ended. I'll be digging into the draft shortly, believe me. Usually I wind up doing a film work and then homework on between 120 and 150 players, okay, to give you an idea of what I'll be doing over the course of the next few months. Man, how did our safeties grade out this year? Well, I thought Pinnock was okay. I thought Newbin was really good. And then at the very end, Dane Belton played a few games after the injury to Newbin. And, I thought he showed some very positive things. He was very active. He also, when he got caught in man-to-man coverage, when he got isolated, it was a bit of a problem. But again, you can handle some of that. Certain matchups when he gets isolated, that could be an issue for him. But I do believe he's a functional NFL safety, and especially if he is the third safety in a 3-safety lineup. There's nothing wrong with that, So I certainly look forward to seeing more of him next year. All right, now let's see if we can get down to some more of these chats. Again, folks, don't be afraid. We've got the link right here at the bottom of the screen. We got over 1,100 people tuning into the program tonight. We could do a video call. If you want to block your camera, we can do an audio call. And the chat is always here on the right side. Big Blue says, how about the last place schedule we get for 2025? I hope you continue to show during the off season. All right. Well, let's see. If you have not seen the Giants' schedule next year, we'll give it to you right now. You know about the teams in your division. Your other home games are Green Bay, Minnesota, Kansas City, the Los Angeles Chargers, and San Francisco. Suffice it to say, that is a tough road to hoe. The away games next season, aside from your 3 divisional games, Chicago, Denver, Detroit, Las Vegas, New Orleans, and New England. A lot easier than the home slate for the Giants. You've got 8 home games, 9 road games. The home games, much more difficult. But maybe that's better, right? You got the tougher opponents at home. Hopefully you can use the home crowd to your advantage if the guys will get up for those games and see how it plays out. So you got to remember something. There's only a couple of, quote, wild cards or empty spots that get filled up by the position that the teams finish in the standings the year before, because the bulk of the schedule is made up of your divisional foes plus the rotation of divisions within the NFL. So in truth, your final record and your slot where you land doesn't have a great impact on the following year's schedule. There's only a couple of open spots there that have to be matched up based on where other teams finished in terms of their position in the standings. So, Big Blue, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Despite the fact that the Giants finished dead last and are top 3 in terms of worst overall record this year, and it will earn them a number 3 draft choice, it doesn't really help them out a whole lot in terms of the difficulty of next year's schedule, again, based on what those teams have done this year. We know year to year, teams can dramatically change. And so we don't know what those teams will look like in 2025. Heck, we're not even sure what the Giants will look like in 2025. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Christine says, I truly hope this show continues. It means the world to me. Well, that's awfully nice of you, Christine. I love talking Giants football. I would do it 25 hours out of the day, 8 days a week. I really would. But I think that there's not enough of ibuprofen at your local supermarket to make that possible, because, trust me, after a while, people do get tired of my passion, intensity, and energy for the game. It can wear on people. I understand that. I do. Believe me, I do. Oh, let's see. What do we got here? We keep going. We've got some people talking to each other. The Big Moo is back in. Cool. Always nice to hear from the Big Moo. Nice weather in South Florida, unusual, as he says. All right. Tudo says, not going to make it to the playoffs. Oh, that's a shame. Tudo, I'm sorry. Best of luck to your team next year. I don't know if you need to do any tweaking, or if you can make suggestions, or if you have any power to tweak your roster. But if you do, I certainly hope you can appreciate what kinds of things that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen have to do as they try to get the Giants back into contention. Let's see here. Tudo and Christine and guys are going through things. Luis Provocero says Eagles practice squad should be the new Giants name. It was funny. Going into the game last week, there was much made about the fact that the Eagles would be benching most of their starters. And that was true, right? They were locked into the number 2 playoff seed in the NFC. Why should they play their guys? And I understood that. It was the right call. Without question, it was the right call. But what people seem to forget is that the Giants had a very lengthy laundry list of injuries. And so I believe at one point they only had 3 of their defensive starters on the field out of the 11 defenders that were playing. So it's true, right? Philly was playing a lot of backups, but so were the Giants. They weren't playing their starting lineup from the beginning of the season. More than half of those guys from the starting lineup are injured and not available. And they're playing guys who were second string, third string, even some guys who were elevated from the practice squad. On offense, the Giants used their 10th different starting offensive line combination on yesterday, against the Philadelphia Eagles. And you know what? The Eagles got 0 sacks. Now, again, these were not the best of the Eagles, but Giants put together a patchwork offensive line and gave up only 2 quarterback hits on the day and 0 sacks to this vaunted Eagles defense. Again, I understand, mostly backups. Nonetheless, they did not give Drew Lock a very hard time. James O'Keefe says, hello, Paulie Dots. Funny how Wilson had lots of gripes and no answers for you today on Big Blue Kickoff. You noticed. Look, James, I gave him his homework assignment. Let's see what he does with it. You say, number 1, try to re-sign Darius Slayton. Need his veteran presence in the wide receiver room. Number 2, identify veteran bridge quarterback for this year. Well, James, I'd love to see Darius Slayton come back. He played at Auburn. I suspect that he's going to want to go someplace where they get him the ball more, where it's warm, or whether he can play in a dome. I don't know that Darius Slayton necessarily, given a preference and a choice, necessarily wants to play in the Northeast weather and climate conditions. I do expect he's going to want to go to a more passing-oriented offense. He's a guy who, for his career, has averaged over 14 yards a catch. He's a quality wide receiver and a quality teammate and human being. I think the world of Darius Slayton. He's a pro's pro. And I'll be honest, I think this Giants locker room is going to miss him a lot. I just suspect that some other team out there which will more emphasize his talents and skills is going to come up with enough money to woo him away. It pains me to say it, but that would be my guess right now. And obviously, number two, really it should be number one, identify the veteran bridge quarterback for this year. I love the fact that more and more people are jumping on board with my idea for the veteran bridge quarterback. I've been talking about this for several weeks, and when I first brought it up, you should have seen the volcanic eruption that I started. I mean, there was lava, spewing all over the place, as people thought that I was trying to reinvent the wheel. It does seem, though, that now that the season has ended, more and more people seem to be on board with the veteran bridge quarterback. And that's great. I appreciate a bunch of folks coming onto my side of this thing. Okay, Lewis says he's laughing at tremendous potential. Okay, that's fine. Certainly entitled to your opinion, Lewis. Says this team should not be upbeat. Well, again, most teams when the season ends, especially when a rough season has come to a conclusion, they're either relieved or they're very broken up and disgruntled and grumbly and ornery and cranky, and because it was like, man, what did we just do for the last how many months? This team really likes each other. And they like the coaching staff. And they enjoy playing here. And they competed right to the end. So I'm sorry, Lewis. The fact that this team was upbeat today is actually one of the factors and one of the reasons why you want to maintain some continuity and you want some things to be tweaked, changed, fixed. There's certainly repairs that need to be made, but it's one of the reasons why you don't blow it up. The Funkus, hey, he's been one of our guys during the course of the season. Says, happy for a Daboll and Schoen return. New York needs more patience. Focus. You think so, huh? Patience? Sports fans in New York City? Patience? Really? Yeah, the key really is you got to take the emotion out of it. I know it's hard. Trust me, I'm a paisan. I'm full of emotion all the time. But you got to take your emotions out of it, and you just have to really get down to the black and white things on the paper and say, okay, it's not just about the numbers. It's about all of the different facts within context. And that's how you have to make a logical and rational decision. And that decision was made by Giants ownership today. James O'Keefe says, John Mara could help out GM and head coach by rephrasing his answer to question asked about hot seat and said they still have 2 years on their contracts. Well, James, here's the thing. The Giants as an organization have a policy of not announcing how many years are left on contracts. That's what they do. It's their prerogative. Some people announce lengths of contracts. The Giants have a policy of not announcing lengths of contracts. So therefore, your suggestion would be impossible. He could not say that, or by definition, he'd be giving up the length of the contract. So understood. I get the suggestion. I know where you're coming from with it, but it's not something that was plausible based on the policy of the organization regarding contractual information. Lewis says, Giants tried to sell us that Jones was the quarterback for a long, long time. We already knew the answer to that. You don't understand Genius Smith. I guess he meant Geno Smith. It's called being part of a good organization. Well, Geno Smith will tell you that when he got there, it was the scheme and the offensive staff, the quarterback coaching, and obviously, Pete Carroll had a lot to do with it before he was pushed out in Seattle, that turned things around. And in reality, Lewis, what you're missing out on here is that there are a number of quarterbacks over the years, and we gave you a slew of them, right, who have experienced a resurgence when they switch teams. I mean, it happens. And sometimes it's as simple as the quarterback being more mature, being more educated, being more patient, learning from his previous experience. Sometimes it's because of the scheme. Sometimes it's because of the players he's around and his teammates. Sometimes it's just because of the coaching. There can be a plethora of reasons why a guy might find a resurgence somewhere else. And it's important that the Giants find that veteran bridge quarterback who can experience success in 2025, at least in my opinion. That's where I would go if I were the Giants this year. And again, it seems like more and more people are jumping aboard with that theory. And I'm glad to see it because I got tired of facing the volcanic eruptions that people seem to have when I offered that suggestion some time ago. Christine says exactly about Jim Plunkett. Okay, you get it. And if you're too young to remember Jim Plunkett, go look him up on the internet. Stanford quarterback, all-world everything, comes into the league. Oh my goodness, was it a mess. Oh boy, it was a mess. Got to his third team, became a champion. That's the way it happens sometimes. Lewis says, I couldn't wait for Kerry Collins to leave. Well, see now, Lewis, you just destroyed all of your credibility because Kerry Collins was a damn good quarterback, and what he did to win the Giants the NFC Championship following the 2000 season was nothing short of spectacular. So you've now destroyed all of your credibility. Ravindir Singh says injury prone. I guess he's probably talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, who his biggest injuries, broken hand and a torn ACL, can happen to anybody. I'm not willing to give up on him. Again, I think for all the reasons I stated earlier, he would be the first call that I would make. Lewis says, just admit the answers for the Giants are very murky. Not at all. They're difficult. They're difficult. Look, anytime you've got to make a turnaround, the answers are going to require a tremendous amount of research and contemplation. That doesn't mean they're murky. It just means that you've got to do your homework. That's all. That's all it means. You've got to do your homework. And if you do your homework, you can find the right guy. Look at Russell Wilson's resurgence in Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson was given up for a garbage heap. And he went to Pittsburgh knowing in his own mind that he would beat out Justin Fields. And that's exactly what he did. And now he has had a terrific season for the Steelers. You know, it's very possible very, very possible for the Giants to find the right guy. It's very possible they won't find the right guy. It just requires a tremendous amount of research and vetting through the process and making sure that you do everything you can to uncover all the facts and all the intangibles so that you make the right decision. I can't even begin to tell you what Ernie Accorsi went through to vet out Kerry Collins before they brought him to the Giants. And again, that worked out great. I don't even know why I should read any more of Lewis's comments because he's already destroyed his credibility by dissing on Kerry Collins. So I think that'll be the end of Lewis's comments for the night. G-Men 7. I was a big fan of Joe Milton coming out last year. We missed a huge opportunity to land him before the Pats grabbed him, hoping we can make a push to trade for him. Well, Joe Milton coming out last year had limited experience as a starting quarterback in college. Big guy with a tall, long frame, cannon of an arm, rifle arm. But the questions about him, obviously, a little bit wiry for a guy his size with such length, a little bit wiry, some accuracy issues, putting touch on the ball because everything's 100 miles an hour. And there seemed to be some question because of limited experience as to how he would do processing in the National Football League. But he was on my list last year, and I actually talked to him at the Combine because he intrigued me enough that I had a few minutes conversation with him. Seemed like a really good guy. And I thought, you know what? If you wanted to take a flyer late in the draft, that would be one of the guys that I had on my list. So, G-Men 7, I don't know that the Giants are in a position to take a flyer now. They need the real deal. The veteran who's going to help them win games immediately. So I don't know, if Daniel Jones had worked out, if things had gone well for him and he was still the starter and he was winning, and you had a winning quarterback already in place with a lot of experience, I think taking a guy like Joe Milton would have made more sense for the Giants, but not where they are now. They are trying to climb out of the quicksand. And let me just move back here. This back of my seat's a little creaky. Based on where the Giants are right now, without a signed quarterback going into next season and coming off a 4-13 campaign, I don't think that they're quite in that spot. Now, what I would consider doing, and again, when I go through some of the quarterbacks in the middle of the rounds this year, those guys in that ballpark, I mean, somebody like a Jackson Dart out of Mississippi is, somebody who has already piqued my interest a little bit. And when I start thinking about third and fourth round quarterbacks, if I were to suggest you take a flyer on a developmental guy who could work under the veteran bridge, a guy like Jackson Dart might be a guy that I would consider. He has piqued my interest about a month ago. I kind of started putting him in the back of my head and said, hey, when I make sure, when I get to the quarterbacks, that's a guy I want to do some homework and I want to study on. And, of course, Dart wound up having a terrific season at Mississippi. Okay. Ravindir Singh says, Tommy screwed us. I'm not sure I totally understand what he means, but we'll just move on. Christine says, totally unclutch. Yeah, that was the story of the 2024 New York Giants. Ravindir Singh says, no sure shot quarterback in free agency. Maybe Wilson if Steelers don't re-sign him. Oh, they will re-sign him. There's no doubt in my mind that the Steelers will re-sign Russell Wilson, and he will be their starter next year. Christine says, D-line is critical. Paul, you are on point. John Martin says, I think we need a cover one. Banks, a corner one, I think is what he means. Banks can't turn his head and track the ball. Well, there's no doubt that Tay Banks needs more polish, needs to mature and grow into the position better. Now, I will say this. He has had a lot of trouble adjusting to playing off coverage. He was a man corner and a sticky physical corner at the University of Maryland. As you folks probably will recall, I strongly advocated the Giants taking him in the first round in 2023. And when they got him, I was ecstatic. I think it was a good pick. He has corner one, I should say, cover skills. That's indisputable. He still gets too handsy at times, and you were right. Playing zone and off coverage like he's been asked to do this year has made him very uncomfortable, and it's kind of caused him consternation, and consequently, instead of being able to be sticky with receivers and play shadow or blanket coverage like he is capable of doing, he's had to play off and then had to close on the ball at the time the ball arrives at the target. That is not something he had to do much of when he was at the University of Maryland. It is hard for a corner who has played the other style to be able to suddenly develop that overnight. His first year with the Giants, he wasn't asked to play that. He played more press, jam, man-to-man, just cover. And he made some rookie mistakes like all rookies do. But when you fully understand in context some of the problems Banks has had and why he's had them, you gain a much better and clearer picture of why he has been so inconsistent. It would be a dreadful mistake, dreadful, to give up on Tay Banks as a potential number one corner. The bigger question becomes, what will he be asked to do this season on the field? Now, I always say this. If a player has a particular skill set, it is incumbent upon him as a professional, when he's told to play a different style, it's incumbent upon him to try his best to learn that style and to try to execute that style. That's what you should do as a professional. Banks has been trying to do that all season long, and it's been hard for him. It's been difficult. I see it. You guys all see it. You may not have recognized why, but you see the inconsistent play, and it causes consternation for you as you watch. And you're like, well, why is this happening? Why is he not getting his head around? Why is he not making a play on that ball? Well, when you're thinking too much and you're playing a scheme and a type of coverage that has not been natural to you for your entire football career, you're going to have some rough spots. And we will see how the Giants proceed in terms of possible tweaks that may or may not assist Tay Banks in playing the kind of football that he is capable of in 2025, because he is capable of being a number one corner in this league. Make no mistake about it. His skill set is there. And he also has the ability, not only is he energetic and very much liked by his teammates, but he also has the ability, as all good corners have to forget about the last play and move on to the next one. And he's very willing to challenge guys. We just have to see exactly what he's going to be asked to do in September when the Giants take the field again. So I would implore you to take all of that stuff into account before you decide what you think about Tay Banks. James O'Keefe, team needs more discipline. Too many offsides, false starts, holding both offensive and defensive, motion, downfield linemen, etc. All right, James. This goes back to exactly what I've talked about for weeks. And of course, Christine just brought my copyrighted phrase back. Unclutch. It's that simple. The Giants were the most unclutch team that I saw in the NFL this year. Now, they were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. By the time the season was over, they did have the 11th most penalty flags thrown against them this year. 134. Dallas was number 1 at 166. The Jets were number 2 at 161. The Giants had the 11th most penalty flags thrown against them at 134. Okay? Now, if you really want to be more specific as to how the Giants' penalties caused a problem, here's where you can get them. And this is maybe more to the point of James's comment. Because, James, we do attempt to educate here. And so, where is your comment most relevant? Pre-snap penalties. 56 against the Giants, third most in the NFL. Cleveland, 61. Chicago, 59. New York Giants, 56. Okay? That's right there. The pre-snap penalties, 56. Third most in the league in 17 games. That's an average of more than 3 a game. Okay? That's not good in any way, shape, or form. Now, again, 10 different starting offensive line combinations. Could that be part of it? Sure. You had rotating quarterbacks the whole second half of the season. Could that be part of it? Sure. But ultimately, it is the player's responsibility to make sure they get the signal, they get the call, and they do exactly what it is they're supposed to do with precision and detail. And the Giants did not do nearly enough of that this year. So, there you go, James. You want to focus in a little bit more on your comment, it would be about the pre-snap penalties, more so than anything else. Those are very hard to swallow, very hard to excuse. It's about understanding. It's about communication. It's about focus. But it also, unfortunately, is also about continuity. And that is one of the factors, the lack of continuity that the Giants had in several areas. That's got to be part of the reason, but only part. I'm not excusing that ranking. It's not to be excused. Okay, it's not. But you have to look for the reasons why. Continuity, lack of it, is one of the reasons why. But just like the sack number last year had to come down from over 80, that pre-snap penalty number has to come down next year for the Giants to be a better team. Christine says she agrees, totally agrees with James. James has another guy I really love, Mason Graham, stud defensive tackle, a 3-technique defensive tackle, which means he would complement Dexter Lawrence perfectly on the front line. He says he's going to be a Pro Bowler. Mason, I have seen him, and there is no doubt in my mind that the 4 players, okay, the 4 players, and I'm just going to say, I know so many people want quarterbacks up there. Push the quarterbacks aside. I don't care what order people want to take them in, but Mason Graham and Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan, Andre Carter, the linebacker, the edge rusher from Penn State, and obviously Travis Hunter. You know, the two-way player out of Colorado, wide receiver and corner. Those 4 guys, those 4 guys, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with any of those guys. You can't. Those guys, Abdul Carter, I said Andre. Sorry. Abdul Carter. I wanted to make sure there. I just took a glance. Andre Carter's another player of another time. Those 4 players you cannot go wrong with. In all honesty. You can't. Carter's an edge rusher. Graham's a stud DT. Hunter and Johnson are cover corners. Those 4 guys, in my opinion, you get any one of those 4 guys, okay? Any one of those 4 guys in the top 5 picks of the draft, and you came out a winner. Especially after 2 teams are going to overdraft the 2 quarterbacks. That's how I feel. Ravindir Singh says money was the problem with Leo. Leonard Williams. Well, sure. Because, you know, when they got the offer from Seattle to make the deal, they, out of respect for him, they knew, all right, you got a chance to go to a playoff team. What do you want to do? Now, they knew he was going to be a free agent. And it would probably take a lot of money to sign him. So, yes, it was to their benefit to get the picks, right? So they did. Again, with Leo's understanding that he was willing to go to a playoff team. He thought that that would be good for his career. But then Seattle re-signed him. Now, let me see what that number was. Because Leonard Williams, heck of a player. His contract, oh my goodness. Yeah. Leonard Williams got, oh wow, $64.5 million for 3 years. Big time number. Big time. It's over $20 million a year. And deservedly so, again. He's a hell of a player. And the Giants, you know, and the Giants and Williams, let me make something clear to you too. when they made that deal, both he and the Giants said the door was open, that if there was a chance that he could come back for this season, that the door was open. There was no hard feelings there. The mutual respect was between the two parties. But you knew there was no way that the Giants were going to be able to afford that kind of money. So yes, I don't have a problem with what you're saying. Okay. Tank Parham says, can you reach out to Dabes and ask him to get Robert Saleh for defensive coordinator? He doesn't have to move his family. I'm assuming that Saleh's renting a place in Green Bay as he's a consultant for the Packers. I don't know that. And I don't know if he kept a house in California from all the years we was with San Francisco. Don't know the answer to that. But anyway, at the moment, the Giants do have a defensive coordinator. Now, if that situation should change, we could have more of a conversation. Christine says, I remember the 80s and our stud defense. And just trying to be positive. Well, there was a lot to be positive about with those Parcells teams, that's for sure. Bill Belichick at the controls as well. James says, amen, Christine, and 80s D was awesome and tough as hell. For sure. Folks, we're going on almost 2 hours with tonight's program. Over 1,300 folks are live and tuned in right now. As long as that number keeps holding or going up, I may stay with you for another half hour. I didn't expect to necessarily go past 10 o'clock, but if you guys still have enough to say or enough to call in about, remember, if you're coming in late, go to the link. We can take a video phone call with you. We can take an audio phone call with you. It's different than a lot of these programs that you guys may participate in. We don't have to do a chat. You can actually come on the program and do a audio call or a video call. I actually prefer those because I am a broadcast professional by trade, so I do like to talk to people. Let's see here. Crowd Favorite Media says, I think bringing them back was the best decision. Well, I agree with you. I think it was the right decision. And it's something that I had anticipated now for several weeks. And that's exactly the way it happened. For some reason, there were some folks who either did not want that to happen or did not think that that would happen. And they were wrong. So be it. Ravindir Singh says he wants a quarterback one and a CB one. We definitely need a quarterback one. Again, I think you have a CB1 talent already in the building, but there is nothing, and absolutely nothing that says you can't go out and get another high-quality corner. I told you earlier in the show, if Travis Hunter is there at 3, oh, man. Now, I will tell you this. Travis Hunter is there at 3, and the Giants decide on taking Graham, I would understand. I think both of those guys are the top players at their respective positions. And the Giants absolutely could use a 3-technique defensive tackle. But again, I'm much more concerned about how they're going to tweak their scheme and play with their defensive players and how they're going to use those tools. Because you don't want to be drafting a dynamite player with terrific skills and then not necessarily use those skills to maximum advantage. Christine says, typical Wilson. I guess Christine, do you know and by the way, there's Christine again. She becomes another super user. All right. Thank you very much, Christine. Really appreciate it, as always, for your support of our program. She says, typical Wilson. And, I don't know. I guess, Christine, you do watch Big Blue Kickoff Live, so you are very familiar with Mr. Wilson. I think his middle name is Negativity. We also have another guy on the program on the Big Blue Kickoff Live show, that Charlie from Maine, another guy who can't get out of his own way with negativity all the time. I wonder sometimes if there really are people. You guys know the Charlie Brown comic strip Peanuts, right? A lot of people nowadays, they don't understand the classic comic strips. I don't even know how many papers even carry Peanuts or Charlie Brown anymore. But there was always Pigpen. Or in Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore the donkey. Oh, hi, Pooh. It's another dreary day. Right? I guess there are really people like that who just can't get out of their own negative shadow no matter what happens. Okay, let's see. Scott Young. Paul, I asked you a question last week about how many first-round quarterbacks, how many actually make it in the league. You're going to do some homework for me on that. Well, let's see now. Where is my Scott? Isaac Moore says, Paul, my man Isaac, how are you? Scott, I want to give you some numbers, Scott. Okay? Again, I've done the research. I've got proprietary charts and stats and spreadsheets on all of this stuff. Let me go grab it, and I'm going to give you just a taste. Okay? I'm going to give you just a taste about what happens with first-round quarterbacks. Okay? All right, here we go. Let's see now. My study, okay, goes from the year 2000, the 2000 season, through the 2021 season. Now, why did I do that? I did that because we always say, stock answer, 3 years before you can really get a good concrete evaluation on a rookie prospect. They always say it takes 3 years to evaluate a draft. So I said, you know what? We're not going to include anybody from 22, 23, or 24. There could be too many variables, too many ups and downs. We're going to disregard that. So the study that I did was from the 2000 season through the 2021 season, which is 22 seasons of NFL football. Okay? Now, here's what we found out. Over the course of that time, okay, there were 16 quarterbacks taken with the first overall pick in the draft. 13 of them made a Pro Bowl. That's terrific, right? 2 of them made All-Pro, which of course is the highest level of All-Star qualification that you can have in the NFL. All-Pro. 2 out of 16 made All-Pro. So that's 13%. Now, guys that were taken, quarterbacks that were taken in the top 6 overall, 32. 21 made the Pro Bowl. 4 made All-Pro. Top 10 overall, 40 quarterbacks taken during that time period. 23 made the Pro Bowl. 6 were qualified as All-Pro. Now, that basically tells you, all right, there's no question, the higher you take the guy, the better chance he has of becoming a Pro Bowl pick. But as far as All-Pro, which is the highest level of All-Star accommodation, there's really no difference between taking the guy first overall or taking him in the top 10. The overall percentage of the 65 quarterbacks that were taken in the first round over a 22-year period is that 8 of them, 8 out of 65, made an all-pro team, first or second team all-pro. That's only 12%. 12%. First overall picks was 13%. Top 6, 13%. Top 10, 15%. But overall, first rounder, which means all the way down to 32, 12% of first round quarterbacks over a 22-year period. That's 8 out of 65 were voted all pros. Again, to be the best of the best. That's not an awesome percentage. Now, here's an even better study that I did. This one was strictly a Super Bowl study. Okay? Looking at the Super Bowl from the 2000 season all the way through last season's Super Bowl, the 2023 season. That's 24 years of Super Bowls. Okay? 24 years of Super Bowls. 27 different quarterbacks made it to the Super Bowl. Obviously, several multiple times. Of the 27 who made it to a Super Bowl, only 6 were the first overall pick in the draft. In fact, here's the funny part. 10 of them were top 6 picks. 11 were top 10 picks. 15 of the 27 were first round selections. So 27 different quarterbacks over a 24-year period got to start in a Super Bowl. 15 of the 27 were first round picks. That's it. 56%, which is basically not much more than flipping a coin. Pretty wild, huh? But those are facts that a lot of people don't want you to know. Not when they drive the hype train and demand that your team pick a first-round quarterback. Yeah. Just as a matter of information, I'm just going to run this down real quick for you. There was a 7th rounder, a 6th rounder, a 2nd rounder, a 3rd rounder, another 3rd rounder, another 2nd rounder, another 2nd rounder, a 6th rounder, a 9th rounder, and a 4th rounder that all started in the Super Bowl. And then there were 2 undrafted rookie free agents who actually got to start in a Super Bowl as well. Think about that for a minute. 15 out of 27 were first-round quarterbacks. But the other 12, nope, were not even taken in the first round. So, with a 56% shot over a 24-year period, that's a coin flip. It's a coin flip. It's not automatic. You don't have to have a first-round quarterback to get to a Super Bowl. Those are the facts. I'm sorry, but somebody's got to bring the facts to light. Ravinder Singh says, Andrew Thomas hurt, had a big impact. Yeah, no question. And by the way, Scott, I hope that does answer some of your questions about the first-round quarterback and quarterbacks going to a Super Bowl. It took quite a bit of time to go through the spreadsheets and the charts, and I have all the details on each one of the guys, each player, the years, the rounds. I got details on all of that on my computer. But I just gave you the simplified total number versions because those facts don't lie. And I just hope they help you out a little bit. You can quote some of those numbers when you, meet your friends around the water cooler and try to tell them that, the things that you don't read sometimes are the most important. Scott says, Paul, I may be one of the few, but I'm happy with both Joe and Brian staying with the Giants. I look for stability in a football team and do not like changing coaches and GMS general managers every couple of years. Sure. Thomas Dimopoulos says, given today's presser, likely or unlikely, Kafka returns to play calling duties. Don't even know. Mike Kafka told us, as the media, that he has another year left on his contract. Now, that was his prerogative to tell the media. The Giants do not release length of contract information. So that was Kafka's choice to do. He says he's happy here and loves it. He actually used the word that he loves it here. So, does he want to stay? Does Brian Daboll want him to stay? Would they consider flopping the playbook back to him like it was in 2022 when the Giants made the playoffs? Thomas, I don't know the answer to that. Again, the staff stuff, that stuff is murky to me. The player stuff is a lot easier because I can evaluate that a lot better, by watching practice and by looking at the games and the tape. It's really hard to delve into the idiosyncrasies of what's going on with an assistant coach behind the scenes. So, I'm going to guess that it's unlikely, but I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm not afraid to tell you that, which is another thing you'll get on my program that you may not get from other people. I understand if I don't know something, I'm going to tell you flat out, I don't know it. I'm not going to smoke you, and I'm not going to make something up just because I want to sound like I know it. That's just dumb. That doesn't do anybody a service. Jason Demore says, what are your thoughts? Or maybe it's Jason Demore. Jason, I apologize if I said your name wrong the first time. What are your thoughts on JMS and Dante Banks? I've already talked to you guys about Banks. I just went through a long deal on that. JMS, he is technically sound, but I do believe he's got to add a power quotient. We talked about this from the time he got drafted by the Giants. Much like Bart Oates before him and Sean O'Hara before him, JMS's frame and size, he's a bit undersized as a center in this league. So that means there are going to be matchups in the league where he's going up against a mammoth nose tackle or a couple of mammoth defensive tackles who are going to give him problems. That's just the nature of the beast. That was one of the things when you had Bart Oates and you had Sean O'Hara, the Giants knew that there may be certain matchups that are going to give them issues. You're just going to have to deal with that. You want to get those guys as strong as they can be. You want to get them as smart as they can be so that they can use techniques and somehow try to compete as best as possible. You're going to try to scheme some things up so that you can help those guys out. Sure, all those things are true. But what you also want, again, as I mentioned a second ago, you want to enhance his power quotient. You want to get him stronger. Because the stronger you get him, the better chance he's going to have against some of the oversized guys he's going to have to compete with. I think JMS is okay. I'd like to see him do better. I really would. I'd like to see, if he gets that power quotient up, there is a chance he can be more effective and more consistent. But I do think he's a good player. I'd like him to be better than just good. And I've already told you guys about Banks. All right. Aiden says, if I'm Joe Schoen, I'm signing Justin Fields, trading Devin Singletary and replacing him with a more proven veteran in the offseason to complement Tracy, and drafting a quarterback if Ward or Sanders is there. All right, well, you see, you've offered something that might push the story forward. Aiden, I appreciate the sentiment. Here's the one thing I would disagree with you about, because it's kind of factual. You can only, subjective things are subjective, right? Everybody can have a different opinion. Factual things, you really can't get those wrong. And Aiden, where I think you're misguided a little bit here, you said trading Devin Singletary and replacing him with a more proven veteran. Devin Singletary is proven. He's been in the league for a handful of years. This is the first year he has not been the lead running back on a postseason team. He's a pro's pro, and he's as proven as it can possibly be. And he's also been a very important mentor for Tyrone Tracy. So that part of your statement, I would have to push back on, because he is proven. You're not going to get anybody more proven. Now, if you want to say more accomplished, someone who has better production and better stats, that would be an accurate statement. But in terms of proven, Devin Singletary doesn't have to prove anything to anybody in this league. Between his time in Buffalo, Houston, and now the Giants, this is the first time that he hasn't been to the playoffs. All right, Isaac Moore says, I just like knowing that we don't have to turn everything upside down again, but feel like the only way you can discipline coach or GM is to fire them. I did hear the play calling comment. Well, Isaac, here's the thing. If you're either Joe Schoen or Brian Daboll, after what has gone down the last two seasons with the one-loss record, and then John Mara's presser today, and obviously we were hinted at some of the things that were talked about in the meeting with ownership, if you don't understand the writing that's on the wall, then shame on you. It's pretty obvious, right? It's pretty obvious that the turnaround has to be happening. The turnaround needs to come in 2025. You're going to have to see this team win a whole lot more games. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. I've often cited Bill Parcells, 3-12-1, first year, 1983. 1984, Giants won 9-7 and won a playoff game. I mean, 6-win improvement and a playoff game. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. What happened that offseason? Bill Parcells installed Phil Simms as the starting quarterback and traded Scott Bruner out of town. Yeah. Find the right starting quarterback, the veteran who's won games in this league before. And the Giants can absolutely be a whole lot better in 2025. Not just a little bit, but a lot. Christine says, I like Anarumo, for sure. James O'Keefe says, I agree, Scott Young keeping GM and head coach both first time in their jobs. Learning curve, we need stability as a franchise. Big Dash Nose says, I'm glad the season is over, P-Dot. We got to get this thing right soon. C-Web. Hey, I'm going to add C-Web to our layout. How you doing there, C-Web?
Hey, happy Monday, P. Dot. What's going on?
You too as well. See, we
Um,
got another video phone call from Webb. This guy's not shy. He loves coming
no,
on the
no reason to be
program.
shy, my man. It's always good to see your face, my man. Always
You
good.
too.
Yeah. So here we are, Monday. Immediately off the press, Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll are retained, and obviously, like Big Dash said, we have to get this thing right. Um, as we talked about in our previous conversations, I really think when Joe Schoen got here, he had a plan. He got punched in the mouth and kind of learned along the way, and now he's pivoting. Fans don't like to hear it. Having a little bit more patience and this new GM learning on the job, but I really think he's learned from his mistakes. We'll see with his actions as we go forward. But as the fan base kind of is anxious for a quarterback, however they get him, whether it's through free agency or drafting, where do you think this regime is? It's probably too early to say, but where do you think this regime is with conviction in the top two guys with Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, or having convictions with a free agent quarterback that hits the market? Saying, okay, looking at where we are right now, if we build XXX, figure out how to stop the run, add protection, add some better depth, are we better going the young guy or someone more seasoned?
All
Where would
right.
you say? Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a loaded question.
No, that's fine. First off, Joe Schoen said flat out that they have a ton more investigation to do on the rookies. They
Mm-hmm.
need to see these guys at the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Game, the Pro Days, the Combine. As he said, especially with the quarterbacks, but this goes for all the prospects. Joe Schoen's a big believer in that not only do you do all the research that needs to be done to vet a guy out, but Joe
Mm-hmm.
Schoen is a huge believer in personal contact, sitting down with guys and having face to face meetings with the key guys that you're really serious about because you need to dig deep into their soul and find out what they're all about. He has not been able to do that yet with the top two quarterbacks or with any of them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
his season just ended. Now, has he
Right.
looked at tape? Sure. Has he been to
Mm-hmm.
games? Sure.
Sure.
But
Mm-hmm.
now the real research begins. Because the real research is the logistical stuff that means you need to be in person with the guys. That's even more labor intensive than any of the other research that has been done by the franchise to get all the background checks and the personnel files all together. So that's where it's at right now. They have no conviction about the two quarterbacks that everybody's talking about. It's too premature for them. They got a whole lot more to dig into. They just got their shovels out this morning, right? Because this NFL
Right.
season just ended.
Right. If you
So
had to,
anybody who says that they know where the Giants are leaning, they have absolutely no idea. They're lying
just
to you.
speculation. Yeah. Yeah. Just speculation. If you had to say going into this offseason, one positive note and one area of opportunity for the Giants this offseason, what would you say the number one biggest thing you're excited about, and what's the one biggest area of opportunity for the Giants going into the offseason where we are right now?
Biggest thing I'm excited about, I would have to say, and I think it'd be pretty unanimous from anybody that you talk to right now, the fact that Neighbors and Tracy did what they did, both 1,000 yards from scrimmage, that's a good combination to have. Remember, Tracy, what he only started 2/3 of the games because
Mm-hmm.
Singletary was the lead back at the beginning of the season.
Right.
So Tracy did what he did. He would have been 1,000 yard running back had he had more carries. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously, Singletary started out the first month as the lead guy. So
Mm-hmm.
that you got to be excited about Tracy. He made a lot of big plays, and Neighbors, his season was a bookend. First of all, I was disappointed in the 10 drops. You got to cut those down.
Mm-hmm.
But he showed some stuff early when he had a couple hundred
Especially
yard games.
at the most important times.
Yeah, no question.
in the game. Yeah.
He was one of the guys who was unclutch during the first 2/3 of the season.
Yeah.
Now, in the first month, he did have 200-yard games, and then I thought in the last month of the year, I want to say I don't think I had him for a drop in the last 5 games. I'd have to go back and look at my spreadsheet. But he cleaned that up, and he did it while he was hurt. That's the amazing part. He came back from the concussion. He missed 2 games, still put up the numbers that he put up, and he was fighting a bad hip. He was fighting a sore ankle. He was fighting a sore elbow. And I thought he was making plays in the last month of the season that really get you excited for what he could be. So I think those 2 guys are going to be very potent offensive weapons for this team going forward. Again, as long as they pick the right guy to hit the trigger.
Where do you rank Theo Johnson in that mix from what you've seen so far from him?
I like Theo Johnson a lot, but, again, we're talking about a guy whose season was cut short because of injury.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he was around in crutches the last few weeks. Okay? I will cross every finger for every Giants fan that they have. Cross your fingers. He comes back off the injury, and hopefully he will be perfectly fine and show the kind of athleticism that he showed us in training camp, because he looks like he could be a very exciting player for this team too. But again, I don't want to get too high,
Optimistic,
only because he is coming off a surgery.
Right.
How's he going to rebound from that?
What are the reports with Andrew Thomas and his foot? How concerned are you with that, with Andrew Thomas's foot injury, knowing especially offensive linemen and feet injuries can be very can be career killers?
Yeah, I talked to Andrew today. He had the Lis Frank in his foot. We all know that. He's been banged up a lot during his Giants career. Said the rehab is going very well, but they did tell him they're going to be super careful with him because he is a big man. 330 pounds, and the pressure and the weight on the foot, it's a very dangerous thing. He's wearing a boot right now, okay? But he does feel very optimistic about how the rehab is going. He would not put a timetable on it and say for sure. In fact, let me just look at my notes as I took notes during the course of the conversation with him. Let me just see. I don't believe he put a timetable on it, but he may have said something that would be a bit of a hint. And let me just check my notes here as I go through this. I take all my notes in my phone while I'm talking to these guys. Thomas says, no, just that the rehab on his foot is going well. He did not have any timetable whatsoever. He wouldn't even talk about training camp. He just said it's going well. So that's all that the Giants have right now on Thomas, or at least that's all he's giving us. I'm sure they have a little bit of an idea in the office about where he's going. And by the way, your other question about the veteran quarterbacks, the free agents, or the guys who could be traded, the pro personnel department has already been doing workups on those guys now for a while. So that information is much more in-house or further along than the draftee information. Because remember, guys who have already been in the league, you got a thicker personnel file on those guys because they've already been in the league. You've got a lot of intel on them. And in fact, some of those guys, you may even have some past intel that came in a few years ago. If they're on the younger side, you may have already had gotten some vetted stuff that your college department had done on them when they first came into the league. So they've got, trust me, this is why you research all these guys all the time, because you never know that a year, 2, 3 years down the road, you may wind up thinking about the guy as a veteran. And you do want to know what did you research on him a few years back? Justin Fields, for example.
Outside of Justin Fields, who else would you say would be in play? Any kind of guesses?
Well, there's a number of guys. Sam Darnold's going to be the biggest ticket, right? He's going to be the biggest ticket if the Vikings decide that they're not going to re-sign him or tag him. He'll be the biggest ticket on the veteran free agent shelf. Now, I am not a Sam Darnold fan. Never have been. But somehow he has resuscitated his career.
Right.
Okay?
I mean, even looking at the game on Sunday and seeing as soon as he got pressured, he looked like a whole different quarterback, back to Sam Darnold.
And that's always been the rap on him.
Yeah, I'm not buying a better situation. He's a whole new quarterback. I mean, I think he's really benefited from the situation around him, the play calling, the line play, the bona fide weapons around him. Like, yeah, we got to be fair here.
I absolutely agree. All right, so let me go through this. Some of the other guys that you could consider who are going to be pending undrafted free agent quarterbacks, bridge guys. You could be looking at a Marcus Mariota. You could be looking at a Gardner Minshew. You could be looking at a Joe Flacco. You could be looking at an Andy Dalton.
Would you be concerned with those guys' health, being able, like, with poor offensive line play, being able to make it through the year? Thinking about before when we took Neighbors instead of taking Michael Penix, my gut feeling was saying maybe this staff was concerned about Penix being able to last a full season behind our offensive line. And that's why they didn't want to pull the trigger on a quarterback. Or JJ. Or JJ wasn't a bona fide starter from day one.
Well,
who knows?
See, the Giants have themselves a bit of a pickle because if this franchise, at least the way I see it, okay, see, Webb, this is the way I see it. I could be wrong, okay? No one's ever right all the time. I think I got a pretty good grip on it. If you listen to what John Mara said today about how this team needs to turn things around next year, you saw the schedule they have, right?
Oh, we got the AFC West. Do you honestly
believe, knowing what we know about rookie quarterbacks and how rare it is for them to put up good seasons right out of the box, especially with the pressure that guy would face if he was in this situation, how likely do you believe that that's going to work?
Slim to none.
Okay. And then what's going to happen at the end of next season? If it's slim to none, at the end of next season, it's going to be another mess, right?
They're saying fire the coach and GM. They got to go.
Okay.
And here we are repeating 2019 all over again.
There you go. So I'm not willing to, in my mind, I'm not willing to deal with that. I just don't think that makes sense.
Right.
If you're going to do that, you're basically spinning your wheels and you're just putting off the inevitable for another season. Okay? So I'm looking at, all right, let me give you some more names. Jacoby Brissett. Another bridge. Jameis Winston. I'm not a big fan, but he's another bridge. Mac Jones. Not a big fan. He'd be another bridge. Case Keenum. Taylor Heineke.
You know what you're getting with these guys, though. Yeah.
Okay. These are the kinds of guys, you're going to be looking at. Personally, I look at the list, and the one guy that just stands out for me is Jimmy Garoppolo. He's gone to a Super Bowl, for God's sakes. He's played under tremendous pressure in a big market, and he's won a bunch of games. And he's only 33, which means if he does well, you got him for another few years if you want him. He doesn't have to be a 1 or 2 year fix.
But didn't Jimmy Garoppolo have a lot of injury history?
He's had some, no question. The biggest ones were a broken hand and a torn ACL.
Yeah, the ACL, I think it was, when he was in San Francisco.
And I ask you, Didn't Phil Simms have the same injuries?
Yeah.
How did he work out after he finally got over those?
He was a Super Bowl champ.
Super Bowl champ twice, couple of Pro Bowls.
Yeah.
You know, top 15 all time. I think he was 11th all time in the Giants 100 list.
Yeah.
I'm not
I
saying
would
that
ask
Jimmy G's
myself-
going to give you that, but the point is, don't disqualify him.
Right.
Don't
I don't want to
disqualify.
disqualify or discredit
And
him.
if you like somebody else on the list I just gave you, go ahead. Pick another guy. The point is, I think philosophically, we're going shopping for one of those guys.
At that point, you might as well shop and draft a quarterback and see if somebody can develop or you can strike gold on either side. Whether
Well,
it's someone
you've got two
resurrecting
choices.
their career or a rookie developing.
You got two choices. If you sign one of these guys, you could take a flyer on a project quarterback late in this year's draft, saying to that kid, you're not going to play in 2025. You're going to be a red shirt, okay? A pro red shirt. And maybe you'll play in 2026. But for the time being, for the first year, you're not playing.
Mm-hmm.
And you see how that project develops. You could do that. No question. And that's why I am going to have to study possible third or fourth round quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Going to have to do it. A few years ago, you may remember, if you remember a lot of the shows that I did, I liked Jarrett Stidham as one of those guys. I like Davis Webb as one of those guys. You know, those are guys, you know, and if you get lucky, you find a Russell Wilson or a Dak Prescott, you know, late in the draft, you know, in the middle rounds. The other way you can go is you get the bridge, you bring back Tommy DeVito as an exclusive rights free agent maybe. Who knows what else you do if you want to keep three. And you say, you know what? We're not going to develop a project guy. We're going to wait till we get to 2026, and that's where we're going to draft
Put all our
the young
chips in.
guy.
Yeah.
And that's where the prospect quarterback is going to come, out of the 2026 draft. And we'll maneuver however we have to maneuver to get a real young guy there.
In that front office and those conversations with pro personnel, scouting, how much of a factor does that 2026 class come into play when they are evaluating right now, saying, okay, we're at 3, we have an opportunity for this guy, or we can wait until 2026 for these array of guys?
The way it comes into play is, if people are going to talk to you now about making a trade, you know draft capital is going to involve some 2026 picks. A first rounder, a second rounder, whether either you're going to acquire picks by moving down, or there are people out there who actually think the Giants should move up from 3 and try to get up to 1 or 2 by trading next year's number 1. I would not do that at all.
Right.
Myself, no way would I do that. That's how that 26 draft comes into play. If you're going to trade up or down, and 2026 picks are going to be involved somehow in those deals, that's where that really comes into play, more so than anything else. It also comes into play, for example, when the Giants signed Tyrod Taylor before last season. He was the hedge in case Daniel Jones didn't make it through the season.
Right.
Tyrod Taylor was signed as the hedge because they were hoping he might be the bridge quarterback. Oh, by the way, I forgot to give you 2 more names. Teddy Bridgewater, who just signed with the Lions, and Ryan Tannehill.
Oh, wow.
Not playing this year. Took the year off, but wants to play next year.
How old
on
is
a
Ryan
team
Tannehill
that's
now?
willing to commit to him. I'm just saying, there are guys.
Yeah,
There are guys. I'm not saying I like them all, but there's a shelf. So what happened was the Giants signed Tyrod Taylor to a deal that was going to make him the bridge in case Jones got hurt. But then what happened? Taylor gets in and he gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the season, he opts out and says, okay, I'm out of here. I'm not dealing with this. Giants wanted to re-sign him, and he goes and signs with the Jets because he had had enough of this situation. He wasn't particularly thrilled, and I don't blame him, after he got hurt, and then he wanted to come back in there, and they went with Tommy DeVito.
Mm-hmm.
So, how does the 26th thing come in? Well, it comes into play where if you're going to sign the veteran bridge, you have to figure out. I'll give you a great example. Andy Dalton is 38 years old. Chances are, if you sign Andy Dalton, you're thinking to yourself, okay, that's one, maybe a 2-year commitment or 1 year with an option. Because Andy Dalton at 38, I don't know how much he's got left to give you.
Right.
But if you're signing a Jimmy Garoppolo who's only 34 right now, he could give you 3, 4, 5 years, maybe 3, 4 years. So you want to take that into account. Justin Fields is 26. If you're signing Justin Fields as your bridge, you got to keep in the back of your mind, well, if we really like Justin Fields, we're going to sign him as the bridge. There's a possibility he might wind up sticking around for 6 years. He may not just be the bridge.
How much do you think Justin Fields would demand?
One of the services, I believe it's Over the Cap or Spot Rack, one of the web services that specifically deals with contracts and values, they estimated that he might be a $10 million, 1 year, $10 million deal next year in 2025.
Not a bad investment.
I think because of his age and because he came out with some promise, you might have to pay a little bit more. You might have a couple of people who are going to try to get into a little bit of a bidding war for him. And
my concern with him is, can he throw on time? We didn't really see that in Chicago with him being able to throw on time.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I don't think he did enough in Pittsburgh to make me think that Chicago was a fluke. I'm not that high on Justin Fields. If they are, because they loved what they saw from him coming out in the draft, and they still think he's got it in him, I could understand them making a pitch. Personally, I don't know that I've seen it, but if they've got the intel and that's what they decide to do, in concept, again, I'll be honest with you, C-Webb, I'm not going to cry about the guy they wind up picking. If they pick a bridge quarterback, like I say, I'm on board. And
let's see how it works out.
They can pick whatever flavor of ice cream they want on this one.
Right. It shouldn't matter. Let's just hope it works out.
Well, that's it. You know, if they pick the bridge, again, I don't know. Let's just throw a name out. Marcus Mariota. He's probably not going to excite too many people if that's the guy they decide to take. But does it really matter if that excites anybody? What matters is when he gets here, does he produce?
Where do you think the Mara or John Mara and front office is kind of evaluating that face of the franchise when they are thinking about the next guy, or how do they market this franchise now outside of Malik Neighbors?
Oh, I don't think it has anything to do with it. I don't think the football operations people give two horses' butts about marketing. And why should they?
Or just I mean, Saquon, when he was here, he was that face of the franchise before Saquon.
Well, sure he was.
We had Eli, but who would you say at this point is the face of our franchise? Dexter Lawrence?
Right now? I don't think they have one right now.
Yeah.
You know, Neighbors may turn out to be, but right now they don't have one.
Right.
And what matters to the Giants is that this quarterback decision, okay, whoever it turns out to be, this guy gets them back to respectability immediately in 2025. They can't go through another season like this, or it's going to be a disaster all over again. And it's going to be worse because you will have lost another year. That's not okay. The quarterback that they pick has got to be able to get them back to respectability immediately. And I certainly think the odds are better with a veteran than a rookie to make that happen. So it better be somebody, in my opinion, who has won games in this league before and is capable of dealing with the spotlight, the pressure, and the expectations that this situation's going to put on him.
If you're going vet, then let's move to the draft. Who are you taking at
so the
3
marketing, just to finish the thought, so being the marketing angle or the face of the franchise is not really important here. It's about just making sure you get the production out of the guy. Malik, trust me, the organization as a whole, it's not about being face of the franchise. It's really not. They got to get somebody who can deal with the pressure of this spot, because this spot's got more pressure than a vice right now.
Right. What was I going to say? So if you're going veteran quarterback at 3 in the draft, are you trading back?
Oh, I said earlier in the show, and I don't know when you came on, I'd be okay if they could get a nice deal, and I'll give you a good one, okay? Look at the teams that are available, or the teams that are around them in the draft.
You got Vegas at 5. That would probably trade up.
Vegas, I think. Hold on, Vegas is at 7, right? No, 6. They're 6. Vegas is 6. All right. I would be willing to go to 6. Okay, because if you're at 6, you go down and you're gonna ask them. You're gonna say, we flop 3 to 6. I'm gonna want your 1 next year and your 2 next year. If I can get more than that, fine. But I'm going to want to flop your 1s this year. I'm going to want your 1 and your 2 next year. And if I can get more, I'd like to try to get more. Now, how does that work out? If I do that, now I've got extra draft capital. So that going into 2026, if I need to move up in the first round to go get one of the supposed better classes of quarterbacks, I'll have extra draft capital to use.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Now, if I go back to 6, okay, why would I be willing to go to 6? I told you guys earlier in the show, I got 4 premier players that I really love in this draft. I got Travis Hunter.
Will Johnson.
I got Will Johnson.
Mason Graham.
Marcus Graham. And I got Abdul Carter.
Any of those guys make us better right now.
Any one of those guys make this team better right now. Right now.
I love Mason Graham because of pairing him with Dex. You give Dex an extended life, as well as you're able to stop the run, which has been our biggest issue.
I would probably, again, if I could get that trade, I would do it because I would get any one of those 4 guys at 6, assuming that the 2 quarterbacks are gone, right? Even if 3 of those next 4 are gone, I'm getting the 4th guy. I could live with any one of those guys.
So if Warder Sanders falls to 3, you're taking one of them.
No. I would not take either of the 2 quarterbacks at 3. I would not. I'm more interested in living with the bridge and doing whatever else I can do to improve my football team. And If that means I have to take somebody on defense, either Graham or Hunter or Johnson or Carter, I'm doing it. Because that is the second priority. The first priority is getting the quarterback. Second priority is helping the defense. I'm big on Graham. I agree with you.
I love him.
The only guy I would take over him would probably be Travis Hunter. Because I just think that Travis Hunter is the best pure player in the draft.
Do you really see him playing both sides of the ball in the NFL?
I think he's a cover corner who could potentially give you some snaps at wide receiver. You know, I wouldn't want to burn him out, but there would be instances. If
he's not a wide receiver too. He's like a wide receiver 4 getting a few snaps here and there.
Right. That's what I would do with him.
Team him up, yeah.
I would say, you know, in a package when I have 4 wides, you know, how many times do you go 4 wides in a game? Not a ton. But in a package, if I'm going to go 4 wides, he would probably get on the field a little bit as a receiver on occasion. I think he's a blanket cover corner, shutdown. Mm-hmm. And you can never have enough of those guys.
Right.
And it's a hedge. It's a hedge also, as much as I believe in Tay Banks, it's a hedge.
Yeah.
In case Tay Banks does not polish up and does not, you know, max out the usage of his skills.
Of that one guy, yeah.
So to me, Hunter and Graham are that's a very close call. But I probably would go Hunter first, but I'd be very happy if I wound up with Graham.
Especially at 6, if you can get more assets.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, for sure. And I suspect, to be honest, the odds are probably that Graham, Hunter, and Carter would be gone. You might have to wind up with Will Johnson at 6. And would anybody cry with a 6'2" cover corner out of the Big Ten?
In the NFC East, that I love that because he can get big and physical with A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb.
Right?
Especially when you put those guys in the slot. Yeah.
Now you understand why I've kind of penciled this out like I have? I've thought about this, and it just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But when I first started bridging this topic a few weeks ago, you should have seen the volcanic eruption. Oh, my God, how could you not take a quarterback?
It's every day, P-Dot, in this fan base. I'm used to it.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the narrative is pushed by the print media, you understand. And even the national media, the talking heads, they push it too.
Yeah.
All right, my man.
Have a great evening, my man.
I appreciate you as always. You take care.
Always.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good, man. Take care.
Bye-bye. Always great to talk to C. Webb. One of our favorites, always comes in with a video call, and I certainly enjoy conversations with him. We got a few more folks here. We're going to take this thing to the top of the hour. I mean, we're up at over 1,500 viewers right now, and I've enjoyed every second of being with you guys. Big Dash Nose says, I'm glad the season's over, P-Dot, but we got to get this thing right soon. There's no doubt about that. Chip Heim says, hey, Paul, wishing you a happy new year. Well, let me get these things up here. You guys like to see your logo and your names up, so let me do that. I know you seem high on Jimmy G as a bridge quarterback, especially with the 2025 schedule. What are your thoughts if the Giants consider trade for Derek Carr? Now, Chip, it's interesting you say that because Derek Carr, way back when Eli Manning was still Giants quarterback, I thought that Derek Carr, who I've always been a very big fan of, I always had hoped that if the Giants could get their hands on Carr, he could be the successor to Eli Manning. Always thought that. And then they wound up drafting Daniel Jones and went that route instead of going free agent. So, yes, Does Derek Carr intrigue me? Well, he does. But the problem is this is now some years past. He's older. He's been more banged up. It's been expressed to me, obviously there's a price issue. The contract, what's it going to cost to pry him out of New Orleans? There are some issues there that make it a little less attractive than he would have been a few years ago. Another item that's been expressed to me is that, he was a California guy, then obviously was with the Raiders, and then he goes to the Saints, which is a Southeastern team in a dome. It's been expressed to me that maybe, especially at this stage of his career, he may not necessarily be a conducive quarterback for a team in the cold, chilly, windy Northeast at this point. He's been banged up some, got a lot of wear on his tires. He's thrown a lot of passes. A few years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to get Derek Carr in here as the successor for Eli Manning. Right now, as someone who has always been a Derek Carr fan, I would be a little bit less enthused to have that conversation. But appreciate the hypothetical. And again, whenever I talk about players like this, I have to talk about them in regards to Team X. Because players who are under contract to other teams, it gets a little sticky sometimes if you talk too detailed about those. So I don't want to cause any trouble there. And that's a legal thing that you guys wouldn't understand. And I don't. It's no need to explain it to you. Let's see. What else do we have here? Jason Demore says Shea Tierney could be the offensive coordinator for the Giants. I assume if they would be looking to have someone changed in that spot, if there was a vacancy, I would assume he would get an interview. I like Shea. Shea, by the way, it's Shea Tierney, not Shane. It's Shea. Know him well. Think he's a really good guy. And I know that the Giants people, Shane and Daboll, do think very highly of him. Goofballs is back with us. Says no quality OC or DC will want to come here with this lame duck head coach GM combo. There is always somebody who wants the job, especially in New York, where the reward is immense if you should be able to hit it right. Now, Christine says, not going to make it through tonight, Paul. I'll watch you tomorrow. Christine, I didn't know that I was going to necessarily get to 11 o'clock tonight either. So somehow, here we are almost 3 hours later, and we're still rocking with this program. Miguel Cintron says, P-Dot, is Bowen safe? Are the coordinators' contracts guaranteed, and usually for how long? The only one who has indicated the length of his deal is Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator, who has said he has 1 year left on his contract. There will occasionally be more than 1 year contracts for the assistants. Sometimes they will get more than 1 year. A lot of times they only get a year-to-year deal. Staff seems shaky. Can we get quality coordinators if the ones we have get canned? Again, Miguel, I do believe that if the Giants decide to make some changes on the staff, I do believe that there are some names out there that are quality candidates and they would make a whole lot of sense and even have some attachments to either people within the organization or the franchise. So I don't think that's going to nearly be the problem that some people might believe. Isaac Moore says, why is he only reading X comments? Well, Isaac, I'm trying to get to the bottom of the chat, and all of a sudden, I know they're supposed to go in order on the screen, but out of nowhere, there were a bunch of X comments that appeared all the way at the top. And I had never actually seen that before, even though I've been doing this program all season. I don't know why they popped up so high, but they jumped everybody and went all the way to the top. So I got them out of the way. And now I am going back down to the original progression of the list towards the bottom. So I apologize, Isaac, if you had to wait longer than necessary. But one of the things I do try to do with the program, I try to get to everybody and give everybody at least an opportunity to get in. So, again, I do my best to get through it. Scott Young back again. Give me Justin Fields and Travis Hunter at number 3. Take that all day long for now. Get the quarterback later on maybe in 26. Okay. J-Rock13 says next year's schedule is brutal. C. Sanders says, so to sum it up, we won't be good until 2027? Question? Well, for the Giants' sake and the fans' sake, I hope they're a whole lot better in 2025. Miguel Cintron says Giants will look like a bottom feeder next year. Joe Natal says, Thibodeau, a bust or not? Oh, no, he's not a bust. But to this point, he has not maxed out. And, that's the disappointing thing. The broken wrist and the surgery this year that cost him over a month definitely set him back. But I still think Thibodeau is a very good player. You saw how much the run defense hurt when he was out. So, yes, he can get to the passer, but he also does a terrific job against the run. He's an all-around, dual-purpose edge rusher, and those guys are valuable. It's one of the reasons I love Brian Burns so much, because he is a dual-purpose edge rusher. He is not a one-dimensional, I got to get to the quarterback or I'm not going to be able to make the play. Too many of those guys are in the league. Yeah, I get it. Everybody loves sacks. They get paid, right? They make big plays. Okay, fine. But what about all the other plays that they missed during the course of the game to hurt the team, especially against the run? Jason Demore says, get someone next to Dexter. Miguel Cintron says, I wish we can get someone a beast next to Dexter next season. Graham out of Michigan. I've mentioned him several times on the show. That would be one really good guy for the Giants to pick up. Paul Lickerman, can you comment on the perceived lack of team identity and how to get back to the tough, hard-nosed football type? Paul, it's really hard to have a team identity when they've had so many guys shuffling around at different positions. I agree with you in that I would like people to fear the Giants' defense again more than anything else. And teams don't do that. Why should they? Did you see the Giants' defense on tape this year? It, at some points, certainly in the first half of the season, they were pretty solid. But they still weren't making people fear. What you want to do with your defense is you want the guys to know when they get off the plane and then get off the bus at your stadium, you want them thinking already about how they're going to be brutalized by your D. That's the way it was when Belichick and Parcells were here years ago. That's the way it was when Steve Spagnuolo was the Giants defensive coordinator and John Fox was the Giants defensive coordinator. Teams knew that when they came to play the Giants or the Giants got off the plane, the defense was going to inflict a very difficult and painful day on them. How do you get back to that? Well, first thing is you got to stay healthy and keep your starters on the field. Second thing is they all got to be on the same page, and they can't have busted coverages. They can't have busted lanes. They can't have miscommunications. They can't be leaving guys open in the secondary. They got to punish guys. Mark Collins, who was named by Jerry Rice as the toughest cornerback he ever had to face. You got to punish guys. What did Collins do to Andre Reed in Super Bowl 25? He beat the stuffing out of him. That's what you got to do. That's how you get identity. Joe Natal says, is Thibodeau a bust? I don't think so. Jason Demore says, Jimmy G. I'm all with you, my man. John Morano says, agree with Christine. Keep it going, Paul. Well, we're just about 3 hours now. Sal from Apollo Beach. Any rumblings of free agent quarterbacks Blue may be interested in? Well, there really aren't, but if you saw the call we just had with C. Webb, the video call a little while ago, if you're still up and still on the site and on the program, rattled off a whole slew of pending free agent quarterbacks, and that doesn't even include guys who may be cut or available in trade. There's going to be a shelf of them, like going to the supermarket looking for that bag or that box of pasta. There's going to be a whole shelf of them. There's going to be ziti, there's going to be spaghetti, there's going to be rotini, there's going to be shells. They're all going to be there. There's going to be penne. They're all going to be there. Which style of pasta do you like? I'm a big penne guy. I like rotini, I like spaghetti, but I really love penne. I know. I made you hungry, didn't I? Sorry. C. Sanders, I wouldn't mind Winston. Here's a guy going for Jameis Winston as a bridge quarterback. Still has a nice arm. Will definitely throw the ball downfield. Also a great mentor. Not to mention probably won't cost us too much. He's one of the guys on the shelf. Thomas Demopoulos. Hey, Paul, any urge to grab that football behind you and see how far you can fling it when no one's looking? I tell you what, my friend. From the time I was in high school, I could throw a gorgeous spiral. Could really spin it. Now, didn't have the strongest, deepest arm, but know how to throw a spiral, and a mean one at that. Appreciate the comment. Joseph Santiago, each season unto itself. Ask Washington. You are absolutely correct. See, that is a very, very calm and reasonable way to look at it. Aiden Fink, what do we do with Jalen Hyatt? We don't know how to use him. Do we keep him around to see how he does with a new quarterback? 4 quarterbacks in 24, 8 receptions for 62 yards. Jalen Hyatt is one of the biggest mysteries of my 42-year career covering the team. I have absolutely no idea why this mysterious lack of production has befuddled all observers regarding Jalen Hyatt. And there doesn't seem to be any answer from the coaches. I won't speculate because there's no obvious answer here. When Hyatt talked to the media today, he was rather short with his words. You could see he was disappointed, perturbed, and frustrated by his very small role in the offense. He did say he was going to have to talk to the Giants hierarchy, the coaching staff, and the GM. He was going to be looking for an exit meeting to try to figure out exactly what it is that they could do to kind of clear the air and see if he has a future here. So that mystery at this point continues, and there is no answer. I think it's very disappointing because I do think he is a really good young man who has worked his butt off. I've seen it during the offseason how hard he works, and spent so much extra time with wide receivers coach Mike Groh. It's hard for me to believe that he doesn't have something to offer this team. That's very hard for me to believe. But we also know what the facts are. And the facts are the production and the opportunities have just not been there for whatever the reason. So I have no inclination as to which way that's going to go. Will he find his way into a larger role, or will he find his way off the team? I don't know. I really don't know. It is a mystery. Joseph Santiago says he's looking for Justin Fields. Sal from Apollo Beach says, any appetite on trading down? Absolutely. We talked about that earlier as well with C. Webb. If you can get a really sweet price to move down to the Raiders spot. I don't think that's too far. That's as far as I'm going, though. I'm going down. I would go to 6. I would go to 6. I personally would not go further than that. The Focus says, I want to see the Giants take a bunch of shots at quarterbacks in free agency and the draft and make them compete for their job. I grew up with Dion, and I'm really not interested in a Sanders playing here. Okay. The Focus, I will take your word for that. Giants Avenue says, the team is so bad and badly built that we got to start over this offseason. It was a good time for Mara to hit the reset button. Billboards builds. Whoever the quarterback is next year, I will support him, but I would prefer not Sanders, as I believe he would come with a Dion clown show. Pags 2709. Banks' ball skills are atrocious. These are all things we've talked about during the course of the program. Billboards builds. They need to get rid of the freaking stupid drive-killing penalties and the drops. It is coaching or personnel or both. Too bad we can't load up the receivers with Stickum. Billboards. Not too many people watching this program have any idea of what you're talking about. For those of you who don't, Stickum was a molasses-type goo that was in a jar back in the 70s. And they would have it on the sidelines. And corners and linebackers and wide receivers would stick their hand into the jar and take out a nice scoop of goo and put it all over their hands and their wrists and their forearms. And it was very tacky and gooey. And it would help them hold on to the ball when it came their way. It eventually was outlawed by the NFL. And then the league started to go to the equipment companies, and they started to manufacture ticky-tack leather gloves as opposed to Stickum to help players hold on to the ball. Billboard says, after yesterday's dismal game, to cheer up, I watched the 86 team highlights to go Giants go. There's never a bad time to throw in 1986 Giants highlights. You can do that anytime. James O'Keefe says, 100% agree with the 4 defensive players you mentioned, Paul. Oh, it's Chris Kalath, a super user. And we thank you. We thank you, Chris. I should have seen that earlier, and I apologize so much for not. But thank you, Chris. It says at 9:51 you came in as a super user, and here it is 11:07. So I'm quite late in getting down to you on the chain of the chat. I hope you're still with us. Do you think Isaiah Simmons will be back in 2025? I suspect not. He is a guy who was seeking a much larger role in the defense than what it was that he got. That is another bit of a mystery to me as to why we did not see more of Simmons. But he was used in a very limited capacity, and I know he would love to make a lot more plays, big plays, and have more responsibility, but it was not to be this year. He was on a one-year contract, and so I expect that he's going to try to go someplace where they're going to give him more chances to, in particular, to rush the passer, because he could be a matchup nightmare on the blitz. And, of course, he's also, I believe, very qualified in one-on-one man coverage against some of these slot tight ends that we have seen in the NFL in recent years. So I would suspect not. I'm a huge Isaiah Simmons fan, always was, since he came out of school, and was very glad when the Giants got him. I just don't think that the role that he has been asked to play necessarily fits what he is capable of doing. Mets 2025, how much cap space do the G-men currently have going into the offseason? According to Joe Schoen, they have over $40 million. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? Scott Young, crazy facts on the first-round quarterbacks. Well, facts are facts, Scott. Didn't make them up. All you got to do is research them. The facts are there. The first-round quarterback situation is far from a sure thing. Ralph says most likely free agent quarterback. He's like Darnold, Fields, Cousins, or Wilson. Well, Darnold's free. Fields is free. Wilson's free. Cousins is not. Cousins would have to come in a trade, or if Atlanta would have cut him, then he would be free. The other guys are, in fact, let me check on Russell Wilson. Yeah, Russell Wilson is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, but he's going to get re-signed. There's no way the Steelers are going to let him go. I don't see that at all. Darnold is going to be much, much too expensive. So Fields is the only legitimate free agent out of your list who I think would be a appropriate bridge candidate. Let's see what else we got here. C. Webb is back here on the chat. Are there win-loss guarantee this upcoming season? I'm not sure I understand that question. Scott Young says, thanks for the research on the first-round quarterbacks. Not a problem. What I would love to do, except that it took quite a while to do the research, and there are too many people out there who would just love to take a picture. You know, I'd love to post the sheet and the graphic and the chart that I made of both of those pieces of research. But if I do that, what's going to happen is someone's just going to steal it, you know, because it's great information. It's factual. It seems to be buried deep under the carpet where, you know, all the people who want to just scream about taking a first-round quarterback, they don't want you to know those facts. And quite frankly, again, you know, there will be some people who will just then take that and all of a sudden they're going to jump on the bandwagon. Well, I did the work. I'm not too anxious to necessarily share those sheets with everybody else. But you asked me about some of the information. I gave you some of the key components, and I think you understand where I'm coming from on that. It is far from a sure thing and not a risk that I would be willing to take if I were a general manager. Chris Webb, happy P-Dot, happy Monday. Absolutely, my man. C. Webb, there he is. You see, this is the thing. I get so backed up on these chats that some of these things are like an hour and a half old sometimes. And especially when I get C. Webb on the video call, he is such a good caller. And he's so reasonable and so logical and so well informed. I really love talking to him. So then what happens is I get really backed up on the chats. So C. Webb, you're the one to blame. You blame me for being late on the chats. Sean Jackson, another one of our regular guys. How's it going, he says. How you doing? He says, I think I was in a Giants fan minority that preferred Schoen and Daboll receive at least a fourth season instead of them being fired. Did 2024 raise John Mara's anger past its ceiling? He said today that his patience has just about run out. And I can tell you from being right there, a couple of feet away from him, he wasn't kidding. And yes, I suspect that I don't know if you were so much in the minority as much as the other side of that fence was certainly the loudest. Okay? The folks who were screaming for people to be dispatched were certainly the loudest. Now, were they the majority or did they just make the most noise? Sean, I'll be honest, there's no way to tell that. I do know this. Twitter blew up like a nuclear warhead today when the announcement came out that they were coming back. At least my pages on my Twitter did. But again, what we know is that the angry minority will always scream at the top of its lungs. So it means they're always going to be heard. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are the majority. Thank goodness for that, right? you'd like to think people are more rational and are willing to give logic and thought into their decision making. All right, the Big Moo says, I've been saying that if we don't get our quarterback in the first round, pick Travis Hunter. Well, you've heard me talk about that on this show, haven't you? Draft the best quarterback available in the second round and develop and get Justin Fields as the bridge. Mikey C says trade the pick for more picks. The team need like two playmakers. Well, and he says here Carson Beck might fall to the third round. I'm very iffy on Carson Beck. Obviously, the injury is a big deal and so forth and so on, but I'm also iffy on him for other reasons too. He says Jackson Dart, it's Jackson, not Jason Dart, it's Jackson Dart, might have to trade back into the first round for him or he might be hype. I don't think, you're right though, I don't think he should be a late first round pick. I think he should be later. Okay? I do. But you're right. Quarterbacks get overhyped and they get pushed up and they get drafted too high. I don't think Jackson Dart is a first round pick at all. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Might somebody push him up there? I guess it could happen. And again, he intrigues me. I haven't done all the study that I want to do on him yet. But he certainly intrigues me as a deeper project dark horse. Mikey C also says he would trade for Anthony Richardson. Oh, I just don't see that one at all. Paul Lickerman says grab Fields, draft Hunter or Johnson, get Dart, build O-line. If we stunk it up, grab quarterback next year. Well, Paul, a lot of what you said there would jive with a lot of what we've talked about during the course of this program. You know, again, I don't happen to be a Fields guy, but I would absolutely understand if they went for him. If they've got a really good report on him coming out of school and they really, really liked him, and they don't think that his pro stuff has slipped his value very much, you could absolutely make a very strong case for what you just printed right there. Bellas says, you honestly believe there was someone out there, free agent quarterback, that can win now? I absolutely believe that. Absolutely 1,000% do I believe that. Kelly Dunbar says hello, and I say hello back to you. He says Giants are taking a quarterback this year, not next year. Well, they might. They need a quarterback. Whether it's draft or not, they need one. He says Abdul Carter wouldn't start. No, you're right. Thibodeau and Burns, those are your two starters. You're absolutely right. Carter would not start initially, but I suspect he would have some role on the team. He would probably immediately become the third edge guy who would get into the rotation if Azeez Ojulari is not going to come back as a free agent. You're saying give me Walter Nolan over Mason Graham. Well, I've seen Graham, and I think it's pretty universal that people love the guy. I can't tell you that I've done any workups on Walter Nolan at all to this point. He says second priority is helping the quarterback. He wants to know my take on Walter Nolan. I don't have any take. I don't have any take. Again, I want you to understand something, Cody. During the NFL season, I am all focused. I'm like the coaches and the players say, one game at a time. Focus is on this game. The only college football stuff, I will catch occasional games on television, okay? I will talk occasionally, have conversation with some scouts and some football people who I respect in the community. But I don't do any college football draft study, really, until after the NFL season is over. That's when I get cut-ups and I get my research materials. I do play-by-play for the Northeast Conference, which is an FCS school here in the region. So that's really what I'm doing when I'm thinking about college football in the fall. It's because I'm doing play-by-play for that conference, and obviously we're not talking about guys who are going to be first-round draft picks when we talk about the Northeast. Yes, Cody, you're correct. Banks is a man coverage guy. Totally concur with that assessment. That's exactly what he is, and that is not what he's been asked to play much of during the course of this season. Isaac Nathanson, what do you see at practice with Hyatt? He does everything he's asked to do. He does. I am at a loss. I don't understand what's going on there. He appears to do everything he's been told to do. The coaches say he does everything he's been told to do. He's a terrific kid. I wish it was that simple, Isaac, because I have seen players over the years who did not do everything they were supposed to do at practice. Their practice habits were poor, and that was easy to see. Or they just did not produce at practice. You could see that it wasn't happening. That's great, because now your eyes tell you, all right, there's a problem here. This guy's probably not going to play much, or he's not going to last long. Don't see any of that with Jalen Hyatt. Cody Dunbar does not want Derek Carr. That's fine. Let's see here. See, Webb says, where are you with Hyatt? We've already talked about that. Limited route tree, can't be press coverage. See, that was the take on him coming out of Tennessee. But then he gained some weight, put some meat on his bones, got stronger, worked extremely hard. I've seen him run the route tree. He seems to have overcome the knocks that were on him at Tennessee, which is why he dropped to the third round. So I understand the comments, C-Web. I do. It appears that he had addressed that stuff, though. Maybe he didn't do it to their satisfaction. I mean, literally, we're grasping at straws here trying to figure out what's going on with him. That's for sure. Cody says, Happy New Year. I say Happy New Year to you as well. So, I just took a quick check here at Walter Nolan, and the Ole Miss defensive tackle is 6'4", 290 pounds. All right. Well, let's put it this way, Cody. I've talked about the need for a defensive tackle. They think that he is the guy who can, pair up with Dexter. I'm sure I'll get around. Believe me, I will get around to checking on him. And it's a need. It's a need. No question about that. Let's see here. It says Mike Kafka. Cody also says Mike Kafka is gone. Goofball says he wants Davis Webb if there's a new offensive coordinator. Cody Dunbar is a big Ole Miss guy. He says, what happened here? Oh, there it is. Okay. Thoughts on Trey Harris at Ole Miss? Again, you're getting way ahead of me here with draft stuff. I'm sorry, Cody. I am not prepared to do draft stuff. The NFL season just ended. Eli says, is Drew LR going to enter the draft? Again, we're talking draft stuff. I feel bad. I feel bad that I'm not able to help you folks out with some of these things, but I also don't want you to feel like I'm ignoring you. So I'm at least getting you a chance to be put up on the board, but I'm being straight and forward with you. The draft has not been on my mind at all. It will only start getting on my mind now. See, Webb says, just build this thing the right way. I'll be patient until then, won't overreact. Cody says, Kayvon needs a D coordinator, knows how to use him. Cody Dunbar says, what CB corner do you see Shane going for in free agency? I quite frankly would like to see him get his hands on either Hunter or Johnson rather than drafting a quarterback up there in the top 10. All right? Isaac Moore, if Rex doesn't get a head coaching job, would you bring him in as defensive coordinator? No, I don't think that Rex Ryan fits the Giants model. Cody Dunbar says DeVito pasta. Not totally understanding what that's about. Sean Jackson says, wow, you wouldn't draft Ward or Sanders if they fell to third pick? Nope. No, I would not. Listening to Mara, he emphasized the quarterback position, and he doesn't sound like he'll tolerate the Giants picking top 5 next season. You're right. Quarterback is a priority. And no, I don't think picking in the top 5 next year is going to be really good for anybody. But remember, today, John Mara said specifically, priority is a quarterback. It can be free agency or a trade or the draft. He was very clear. There's 3 avenues that they can use to get one. He did not, in any way, shape, or form, emphasize which of those 3 areas he is prioritizing. He simply said they've got to get one. Who's going to disagree with that? We all know they need to get one. You get the best one you can for this situation. I think I've spelled out clearly how I feel about it. Cody Dunbar again says, we need to inflict talent on this roster and get back to keeping real Giants players because right now we've been a laughing stock. NYC TV, NYC. Love you, but you're wrong about Dexter. Lynn, will they play together? The Giants run 26 when we traded. Well, I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about. Oh, he says no. He says now here. Before the Giants traded Williams, the Giants defense was ranked 26 against the run. They wasn't that good of the tantrum. I'm kind of lost with what you're saying, but no, trust me when I tell you that the Williams-Lawrence combination on that front line was a terrifying duo to every single offense that played the Giants. That's a fact. Now, the rest of the guys around them were not necessarily terrorizing all the time. But Williams/Dexter Lawrence, oh yeah. Teams did not want any part of those 2 guys as a duo. So I'm sorry, NYC. That part of it is a fact. You're coming at me here with this ranked 26 against the run. That is a stat that is more indicative of the guys around them, not those 2 players. Let's see. Chuck says, I always used sticking when I played. Nasty stuff. Yeah. No doubt about that. All right, we're almost done here. I'm going to take it to the bottom of the hour. Sean Jackson says, now that we know Daboll's returning under Mara's expectation, the team must improve. Is there any chance Daboll will simplify his offense? Because I've heard a number of players mention the offense's complexity. Everything is possible, Sean. It's all on the table right now. When you finish 3-14, everything is on the table. Everything must be looked at. It must be sifted through with a fine-tooth comb. And whatever you can fix has got to be fixed. You can't disqualify or rule anything out. C. Webb says, do you believe Joe Schoen and Daboll were given an X amount of wins by John Mara? No, I do not believe that there is an X number of wins. Teray Jackson, Paul, I'm a big fan. Appreciate all your info. Missed some of the show, but really wanted to hear the info on the quarterbacks. I don't remember what time we did the quarterback info, but I think you will, if you can somehow find it by going through the, what do they call it? The search bar on the bottom of the video when the show is up on YouTube later. I'm sure you'll be able to find it. Billboard's Build says, good night. Good night. Absolutely. Kobe Dunbar says, God bless. Back at you, my friend. No thanks. Carson Beck couldn't beat Ole Miss, Alabama, and Notre Dame. I am not particularly a big Carson Beck guy myself, so we're definitely on the same page there. Again, there is some limitations to the little bit of college football that I have been able to ascertain. You like Trey Smith, Cody, in Giants offensive lineman in free agency. He's probably the best offensive lineman by far who's going to be available, which means he will be overpriced. I mean, do you really want to do that? I personally would rather draft a lineman on the second day, to be frank with you. I'd rather draft an offensive lineman on the second day to improve that part of the team rather than going after a free agent. Teray Jackson says, who would you prefer more, Sanders or Ward? Between the two, I would prefer Ward. Cody says, Cody Dunbar again, if you had to go grocery shopping for free agency and you're the GM of the Giants, who would you get? Again, I say Team X in the Giants position. I believe Jimmy Garoppolo would be the perfect bridge quarterback for their situation. Cody says yes. Take a look at Walter Nolan. You won't regret on the Ole Miss D tackle. All right, I promise you I will do work on him. Who do you see at kick returner for next year competition as kickoff returner, says Cody Dunbar. I love Smith Morset. He did a marvelous job for the Giants this year, including the 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown just 2 games ago. The question is, can they bring him back, or is he suddenly going to command some money now because people saw that he was actually really good at it? Cody says, you're good, Paul. I respect you. I respect you too, and I respect the questions. I do. But I'm going to give you an honest answer. What I don't know right now, because I haven't got there, I'm going to tell you. I'm very transparent. I really am. And I apologize for not being able to get to that stuff. I just spend so much time every week on the Giants and their opponent. I just don't have the ability to go through draft stuff. The Big Moose says Travis Hunter will not make it to the 6th pick. I don't think so either. There's a really good chance he'll be there at 3. Big Moose says tuning in late. Isaac Moore says if you trade with Las Vegas for next year's one, you're probably getting another high pick. Absolutely. The Raiders are the perfect trading partner. They really are. Especially if Sanders is still there at 3. If we're to believe that there's something going there with Sanders and the Raiders, some people think there's a connection there. We know they need a quarterback. That's the perfect trading partner. Yo was good. Says Giants have not been able to stop the run since Leonard Williams left. Hey, man. You don't have to sell me on how good Leonard Williams was. Jacob Petruzzi says, Paul, new sub, love your work. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. We're over 1,700 people live on the program right now. And we have been going for 3.5 hours. Jacob says, same guy, Jacob Petruzzi. Paul, you think we trade out of 3 if Hunter is there, but quarterbacks are gone? I think you have to think about it. How rich can the package get? That's the question. If the package is really, really rich and you don't have to move down past 6, boy, you really got to think about it. But it's got to be rich, and it can't be too far down. Otherwise, how do you pass on Travis Hunter? I mean, really, you're going to have to really prime you with a crowbar to prime you away from Travis Hunter. George Lewis says, do you think Bowen is gone, Paul? again, as we told you earlier in the program, the handicapping the assistant coaches, that's really an impossibility. It really is. I'm sorry, it just is. D Black Mamba, which of the quarterbacks will you take in the draft? All are available at 3. I take it you mean the overall third pick, not the third round. The answer is I'm not taking a quarterback with the third overall pick in the draft if it's me. All right. Back at you, Cody. Says, love you. Okay, cool stuff. I'm with you, my friend. You was good, says Travis Hunter or Will Johnson. I got to think Travis Hunter, but there's no way I'm shedding a tear if I wind up with Will Johnson. Believe me. In fact, depending upon what the kind of system you're playing, you could not just not shed a tear, you could be really happy with Will Johnson if you let him play physical, like what he wants to do. I mean, talk about a great consolation prize, right? Greg Knoll says, why does this work so much better than BBKL phone lines? Good work, Paul. Well, Greg, here's what I can tell you. They finally were able to get the BBKL phone lines working again this past week. All 3 lines are now live and active and working. These audio and video phone lines are also available, but nobody seems to want to use them. Everybody loves the chat. The problem with the chat is I talk so long with everybody, trying to get to everybody's questions and comments, and then when I do get a call, I go long, that it takes forever for me to get to the bottom of the chat. And I feel bad about that because I got a feeling that there's a bunch of people who may have already gone to bed or logged out, and I never got to them. So they're going to have to go to the archive to see their answer or response. And I do apologize and feel bad for that, but I try to make a very strong effort to get to everybody. All right, Jacob Petruzzi. Paul, in that scenario, though, if you need a quarterback, why trade back when you can get your quarterback? Because I don't necessarily believe that it's smart to overdraft a quarterback. If he is not of that value, you don't take him. That's why. All right. Cody Dunbar wants to ask me about what defensive coordinator could you see the Giants looking at? They have Shane Bowen, so they're not looking at anybody right now unless there is a change made. Therefore, I'm not looking at anybody. Cody Dunbar also says, can you see the Giants adding a running back in free agency or drafting one? Singletary is not really that good, he says. Well, I could see the Giants potentially doing something at running back. They have Eric Gray, who obviously has not given them the production they were hoping to get. And he's been on kick return mostly this year. And then there's Dante Miller, Turbo Miller, the former Columbia back, who I liked what I saw from him in August. And I'm very curious about him. I think both of those guys will be back in training camp. I think they should compete. I think somebody could be brought in to compete with them as well. But I will tell you, Singletary is a pro's pro. The Giants are very, very, very happy to have him. He has been a mentor and someone who has done an awful lot for the development of Tyrone Tracy. So do not just disregard Devin Singletary's value to this team. Jacob Petruzzi says, yeah, Paul, they might like Milroe or Gabrielle on day 2. I suppose that's possible. I would not necessarily do that myself, but I suppose it's possible. You was good wants to know any quarterbacks outside of round 1 as a developmental prospect. I did indicate before that Jackson Dart is one guy who intrigues me, but again, I have not dug into the draft yet. Folks, I'm sorry. I know you want to hear draft stuff. That's not where I'm at quite yet. Okay, Cody Dunbar says, Tracy needs help. We need one in the draft like a big running back. Well, I was a huge fan of Estime out of Notre Dame last year and really was hoping that the Giants would get their hands on him. They wound up taking Tyrone Tracy instead. Well, see, that just goes to show you. Everybody can make mistakes. I'll be the first one to admit it when I misfire. I love Estime, and I know he's had very limited action this year in his rookie season in the league. So, whether it's fair or not, that's just the way it is. And Tyrone Tracy looks like a heck of a keeper for the Giants, so they obviously knew what they were doing. Jacob Petruzzi says Hunter or Will Johnson and a day 2 quarterback would be big if you pick the right day 2 guy. And here Cody Dunbar says Jackson Dart is the man. Love Ole Miss prospects. Again, Cody, he intrigues me. I'm not saying that I would take him, but I definitely have marked down, got to do more research on him. I've been thinking about him for the last month. So much before the game that he had the other day. Cody also says, can you see one day the Giants taking Brandon Jacobs' son as an old lineman? He would be an awesome player. I don't know. Could it happen? Sure, it could happen. I know this. I got enough trouble worrying about this year's draft without worrying about drafts in the future. Yours was good. Says biggest free agent need on the team right now. Quarterback. That's it right there. Get the veteran bridge quarterback. That's what you need. Guys, that's going to pack it. We're over 1,700 live people viewing this program right now. It is going on 1:45. We started this program about 3 hours and 45 minutes ago. Much longer than I intended to. But you guys have been marvelous. You have kept me going. You have kept me up. You have kept me rocking and rolling. And I do appreciate that. We're going to be back. I think we're going to be back on Thursday night. Keep it to my keep it to my Twitter page at Giants WFAN, please. And you see it right there on the bottom of the screen. That's my Twitter page. Keep it there. And if you can check periodically, I always publish advance notice of when we're going to be back with the Big Blue Breakdown. I suspect that we will be back sometime later in the week. Right now, I'm penciling in Thursday at 8 o'clock for another live version of the show. It won't be 3 hours and 45 minutes. I'm telling you that right now. We will go less time on that program, but I'm looking to do another live program Thursday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. For those of you out on the West Coast, I do appreciate you joining in. I suspect, based on the numbers that we get during the program, that some of you do from the West Coast join in during the later hours of the show, and I am very grateful for you to do that. And, of course, we always invite you to take a look at the archive and just, scan through the program for different things that you might be interested in. So that'll do it for this edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. Once again, I'm Paul Dottino. It has been so much fun talking New York Giants football with you as the season concludes with a 3-14 record, and the Giants retain head coach Brian Daboll and general manager Joe Schoen for at least another season. That'll do it. We'll see you next time. So long, everybody.